Chapter 184. How is the natural scenery of Akkad? As the acting lord for so many years, Luoya didn't know much about it. The current transportation of Xia wasn't developed, and Akkad was quite big. Even with the fastest horses and the best carriages, it would take more than 10 days to travel from the north to the south. This was after Luoya repaired the roads. In the past, when the roads weren't smooth, it was normal to not be able to travel for a month due to taking detours and resting. In this kind of situation, all the rulers would command from the political and economic center, which was the most efficient. As for a certain Qianlong old man in his previous life going to Jiangnan, only Lord He, who owned a bank, would be able to handle this master. So even though Luoya was the acting lord of Akkad, the scenery and local snacks under his rule weren't something that Luoya could appreciate and taste. It was better to say that the daily political affairs during the development period made him quite busy. In the future, when the territory settled down, Luoya would go out and travel. This was the goal that Luoya worked hard for. He hoped that when he traveled around Akkad, he wouldn't see the hardships of the people, but the prosperity and well-being of the people. But this time, Xiaoluo's recuperation trip seemed to have made him experience it in advance. Oh, is this the specialty nut wine of the south? The taste is really unique. After taking a sip of the liquid in the cup, Luoya couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. The red-haired girl beside him sniffed the wine lightly, and was also surprised by the strong nut aroma. It's really a unique taste. What's added in it? I remember it's a specialty nut. I think it's called Pamela, which means can't bite in the local dialect. Can't bite. Pfft, what's that? Xiaoluo listened to Luoya's introduction and couldn't help but laugh. She took a sip of the wine and couldn't help but widen her eyes. It's so sweet. Yeah, I knew you would like it. The black-haired boy leaned on the wheelchair and smiled helplessly at the sweet lover. Xiaoluo couldn't help but take another sip. It's really sweet. Why? Although this fruit is very hard, it has a lot of sugar content. No, it should be because it has too much sugar content. If it doesn't become harder, it will be eaten by wild beasts. Also, the wine you're drinking now is an improved version. Improved model? Well, this fruit itself has a strange taste. In order to cover this taste, raisins were added when brewing it. That's why it is so sweet, Luoya said as she shook the pale yellow liquid in her hand. Xiaoluo took another sip. The sweet taste made her squint her eyes slightly. Speaking of which, why do you know so much? Of course I do. This is a key development project in Akkad territory. It's one of the first products promoted by the Poverty Alleviation Task Force in the South. I've read the information and stamped it. By the way, was it your idea to help the poor? Not really. Actually, I learned it from an ancient country with 5,000 years of history. I see. But it's really a unique way of thinking. Xiaoluo thought of Luoya's library of information and nodded. Then she thought for a while and asked in confusion. But how does Akkad territory help the poor? Do you mean giving money? Giving money? Although there is such a method, it doesn't work well in most cases. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. This was a very philosophical ancient saying in the previous world. Luoya deeply agreed with it. Akkad territory's poverty alleviation is mainly to make the information as fair as possible and explore the characteristics of each place. Information? Xiaoluo blinked in confusion. Luoya turned the wheelchair around and looked at the lively village behind him because of the arrival of Xiaoluo's team. How many people in this village have gone out and seen the wide world, do you think? Probably not many. And since they have gone out, it's rare to come back to a mountain village like this. Chapter 185. In front of the jewel necklace convoy, the blonde girl looked at the row of Sorofia's staff and silently waited for the results of the search. Since stopping the convoy until now, Nuair had talked with Gulacy several times. From the maid's response, there was no doubt that Nuair's actions were predicted. Charlotte Sorofia, a young girl who was able to take care of Sorofia's business in the central area of Rosetta City since she was a child, was not only talented, but also intelligent. This incident was a good example. This time, Charlotte had the upper hand from the very beginning. Noelle and the Akkad family were completely led by someone else, and there was no good way to deal with it. From the moment they started chasing after Luoya, they had to focus on their journey. Nuwa had guessed that the jewel necklace convoy was a bait, but so what if she guessed it? Did she have the time to sweep the area with a large group of people? No, and Nuwa believed that once she did that, the jewel necklace convoy would definitely rush out of the border at full speed. She would not be able to catch up. Your Highness, we have searched everything. Luoya-sama is not in the convoy. The soldiers reported. As expected, there was no trace of the two people in the convoy. Nuwa was silent for a while. She could only give an order with difficulty. Send an order to all the garrison troops and militia groups in Akat City. From 3 days ago, all outsiders must be interrogated. Once suspicious people are found, they must be detained immediately. Collect clues from the nearby residents. Once there is reliable information, there will be a reward. After gritting his teeth and giving the order, Noel looked at the warriors of the Akat family and asked with some difficulty, "What's the matter?" "There are a few villages nearby, within a day's journey." "Oh, within a day there should be 3. Well, now our team will be divided into 4 groups. The first 3 groups will spread out and search the 3 nearby villages. Once there is a situation, immediately send someone to contact them. The last group will take the Rosetta convoy and find a place to settle down. Before this matter is over, no one is allowed to leave." Under Noel's command, the soldiers of Akat Hill moved quickly. The 2 captains led their men to the farthest, most remote village that was hard to find. Noel, on the other hand, went to the village that was relatively easy to reach. According to the soldiers, it was a village that was not very developed, but it had a very unique specialty wine. Her Royal Highness and her entourage rushed to the small village before noon. The moment she looked down at the village from the top of the hill, Noel's blue eyes narrowed. She, who was very observant, noticed something unusual. The snow on the road leading to the village was swept too well. It was wide enough for 2 carriages to travel side by side. Normally, there would not be much activity in a small village like this in winter. Even if there was a hunt, there would only be a dozen people leaving on foot. After all, the snow would hinder the carriages from moving forward. The animals pulling the carriages also needed to eat, so it was better not to bring them along. In order to save food during winter, most people would not move much except for sex at night. This was especially true for a small village like this that did not have much activity. However, such a village was able to sweep the snow on the official road so cleanly. Not only did it sweep the snow, but it was also as wide as 2 carriages. There is a problem. Miss Angel looked at the scene around the village, and her heart beat faster. She did not expect that the search that was just a struggle before death would actually yield results. After discovering the problem, she decisively led her troops and rushed down. She saw an old woman trembling as she walked out of the door to get some firewood. Nuwa, who discovered the villagers, did not delay. She jumped down from her horse when she was still a dozen meters away. Her wings of light flashed, and the surging curse power carried her nimble body to the front of the wooden house. The old woman was so shocked that the firewood in her hand fell to the ground. "Old woman, don't panic. I am the commander of Akat. I want to ask you a few questions." Looking at the trembling old woman, Nuwa explained helplessly. These old people in the village had never left the village in their lives. They did not know anything about angels or Heathcliff. She could only cover it up with her identity as a soldier of Akat. Under Nuwa comforting words, the old woman was still panicking. However, she seemed to have realized that the person in front of her was a noble person. Her body no longer trembled, but she was obviously stuttering when she spoke. She did not dare to raise her head. Seeing this, the princess felt helpless and could only ask the question directly. "There should be outsiders in the village these 2 days, right? Old woman, can you tell me what they look like and where they are?" Miss Angel asked in a gentle tone. Hearing this, the old woman was stunned for a moment, and immediately nodded. Yes, there are outsiders. She is a lady from a rich family. She has a big carriage. Oh yes, there are many attendants. The old woman said hurriedly. She gestured the size of the carriage with her hands. Obviously, she had a deep impression of it. Nuwa was excited and quickly asked for more details. You mean the leader is a reddish-brown-haired girl, and there is a black-haired boy in the team? Yes, the boy is in a wheelchair. It seems that his legs are inconvenient. Oh yes, they also bought a lot of wine. Hearing that Luo Iyer was injured, Nuo Iyer's body trembled. She was shocked and angry at the same time. She clenched her fist and tried to ask again calmly. I understand. Then where did they go? That way. They went from the eastern mountain road to the border. They said that they were going to see some snow. We tried to persuade them that there are more wolves there and that the western mountain road is better, but they didn't listen. The old woman frowned and tried to shift the blame. Obviously, she thought that Nuo Iyer was one of the young nobles. Miss Angel saw this and did not explain. She immediately jumped on her horse and chased after them. As expected, she found traces of a large group of people. At the entrance of the village, the white-haired old woman looked at Nuo Iyer and the group of people who were rushing to the east. After a long time, she shook her head and walked back into the house. The moment she closed the door, her body began to twist and flicker. Her white hair disappeared and turned into reddish-brown. Her hunched body also turned into a slender waist. Chapter 186. The mountain roads in Akkad were quite rugged. Luoya couldn't help but think as she sat in the slightly trembling carriage and looked at the setting sun in the distance. It had been more than 2 hours since they left the village with Pamela Wine. In addition to the official road, there were 2 mountain roads in the village that led to the border of the Warren Mountain Range. One was rugged to the east, and the other was smooth to the west. Luoya and the others chose the western road. It was against common sense to travel at sunset, but Xia Luo brought Luoya here to see the starry sky above the mountains, so it was fine to leave at dusk. However, Luoya found something strange. Do we need to be in such a hurry? Didn't you mobilize the people in the village to go hunting on the eastern front? We've already given the money to the prey, and you don't want it anymore? Yes, I wanted to hold a bonfire banquet, but there isn't much fuel in the village in winter, so I couldn't hold it. Ah, that's true. Luoya nodded in realization, then looked at Xia Luo in surprise. She didn't expect this young lady to understand the hardships of the people so well. I thought you were spoiled since childhood, but it seems I was wrong. I was when I was young, but I changed after father got a strange lamp. Xia Luo smiled bitterly as she recalled the events of a few years ago. Luoya held the teacup and blinked as she sipped. Lamp? Yeah, it was about 4 years ago. It was a strange requiem lamp. Puff. Cough, cough, cough. The black-haired youth suddenly coughed when he heard Xia Luo mention requiem lamp. Xia Luo was shocked and quickly patted Luoya's back. Dear, are you okay? I'm fine. Ha ha ha, continue. What about the lamp? Oh, that requiem lamp is a treasure that father obtained from somewhere. Although it's a consumable item, the other party offered a rather low price for it. It's probably a friendly gesture from some family related to Sorofia. However, after obtaining that lamp, father's requirements for me suddenly became stricter. The young lady who had been suffering for so many years finally found someone to talk to. When she saw that her lover had finally found someone to talk to, she began to talk about her grievances bit by bit. From the fringe to Twin Horn Harbor, the difficulties she faced along the way had left her at a loss, but she had no choice but to grit her teeth and endure. Luoya couldn't help but feel guilty when he heard the reddish-brown-haired girl's story. Luoya was very familiar with requiem lamps. If he guessed correctly, the lamp Xia Luo mentioned should be the one he sold at a low price when he was in need of money. What he didn't expect was that Bruce was the one who bought the requiem lamp. Furthermore, it seemed to have greatly affected Bruce's nurturing strategy for his daughter. Luoya naturally didn't expect that Xia Luo's life trajectory would be subtly altered. As expected, the items in the system shouldn't be sold blindly. If a requiem lamp could change Xia Luo's life for the past few years, what about the other items? Luoya was secretly frightened. In Xia Luo's eyes, he was worried for her. The young lady smiled sweetly and decided to change the topic. This mountain road is rather bumpy. Dear, how are you feeling? I'm fine. Although I don't feel much better, I can still bear the bumps. Luoya felt the carriage tremble as he spoke. Normally, the Sorofia family's carriages were both shock-absorbing and shock-absorbing. Normally, when traveling on official roads, one wouldn't feel it at all inside the carriage. The trembling this time meant that the road conditions were rather bad. Of course, it was also because this was a small carriage. The gemstone necklace fleet was too large. Naturally, they couldn't bring it to the mountains to see the stars. Therefore, the two of them switched to a smaller carriage. According to Luoya's observation, this was originally a single-person carriage. Although it wasn't crowded with two people, there wasn't much space left after they sat side by side. As for why they sat side by side instead of across from each other, it was naturally Miss Xiaoluo's idea. Luoya couldn't do anything about it, and was powerless to resist. As he thought about this, the carriage jolted again. Luoya's weak body couldn't help but sway. Xiaoluo's eyes lit up. She pretended to inadvertently open her arms, and let the young man fall into her embrace. Dear? I'm sorry. Feeling the soft touch behind his head, Luoya hurriedly tried to get up. However, he didn't expect Xiaoluo to reach out and hug him. Since you're here, don't move. If you can't sit properly, the two of you can hug each other. You sigh, forget it. Looking at the playful smile on the red-haired girl's face, Luoya sighed helplessly. After experiencing it for the past few days, he had basically given up resisting. Chapter 187. Rosetta City of the Rosetta Commercial United Nations was a very interesting city. What kind of impression would people have when they thought of a commercial city? Presumably, most people's first reaction would be openness. Openness was the prerequisite for commercial exchanges. A country that was completely closed to the outside world was often described as a closed country. It was often accompanied by poverty and rampant smuggling. A closed country for a long time was likely to make it unable to keep up with the pace of the times, and gradually fall behind and be eliminated. Rosetta City was a city that was completely different from a closed country, but visually, it had a sense of heaviness that was completely different from the open country. Rosetta City was tall and deep, and its defensive facilities were the best in Xia. It was far better than Lorraine, the capital of Saint Maester, which had never been invaded by foreign enemies. However, after passing through the tightly guarded walls, the prosperity inside was unprecedented in Xia. The two could be said to form a sharp contrast. It couldn't be helped. Rosetta City was a city that had been robbed more than 10 times in history. The local residents generally had some hereditary psychological diseases, such as fall phobia, food anxiety, etc. The specific symptoms were very obvious, and the general manifestation was that they liked to be big and thick. The city walls, moats, and all the fortifications could be thicker or higher. Weapons had to be ready, and the inventory had to be always full. Not to mention the food, which was a good ancestral habit of the residents of Rosetta City. This was a city that was afraid of being robbed, but it had to be said that this idea of being vigilant in times of peace was actually very good. In fact, after the withdrawal of Austin's troops 100 years ago, the theocracy gradually stopped interfering in the affairs of Rosetta. The nearby small countries had been restless for a while, but they basically stopped after walking around Rosetta. Damn it! Why did you stop fighting? The first thing you did was to build the city walls. Are you Rosetta people sick? This was the common thought of many kings of the nearby small countries after visiting Rosetta City. At that time, Luoya's grandfather, Bran, had just signed a marriage contract with Sorophia. According to Bran's thinking at that time, the two families would be connected by marriage in 10 years' time. Since Sorophia was one of his own, he naturally had to protect her. Furthermore, Akat Hill didn't have anything they wanted. They only had enough soldiers and specialized in fighting. The kings of the surrounding small countries discussed for a long time, and realized that they might not be able to defeat Sorophia even if they tied themselves together. Therefore, the kings slapped their thighs and decided to return to their own homes and find their mothers. This was one of the good relations between King Lo She and Akat territory at that time. In fact, in the Rose Commercial United Nations, although the Akat family's reputation wasn't as high as in the theocracy, they still had a lot of influence, especially in the military. In the past, when the Akat territory helped Lo She defeat the Austin Empire, although it was a great victory, the Austin Empire wasn't a good-for-nothing. They also brought some casualties to the Akat army. Many of the soldiers who participated in the war died in this land. At that time, Many of the soldiers were buried on the spot. After peace, the later generations came to move the graves and pay their respects. The people of Rosetta were quite particular. They had built a cemetery for the good neighbors who had helped Rosetta win the war to establish their country. In the past, the Aucott family would send people here every year, but in the past 20 years, when most of the generation had passed away, the frequency had decreased to once every 5 years. From Locke's military headquarters up, the most senior veterans and generals were often pro-Aucott, and at the same time, they were extremely hostile to the Austin Empire. Many of them even knew each other, and they were also staunch opponents of Bruce's marriage. A marriage with the Austin Empire, even if it was a stable ducal family, in their eyes, was bowing to the invaders. It was an insult to their past achievements and trampling on Rosetta's ideals. In fact, Bruce's wife, Audalisa, was indeed a serious believer in the bloodline theory. At that time, this could be said to have caused an uproar among the senior officials of Rosetta. Many people were fiercely opposed. The attitude of the military towards this woman was imaginable. The pressure from all sides was one of the reasons why Audalisa returned to her country. However, although the disgusting descendant of the invaders left, it didn't mean that the matter was over. In fact, Adelisa's actions still left a bad effect in Rosetta, and that was the impact on Sialuot. Although Sialuot was a member of the Sorofia family, she was half Austin. This was a serious disadvantage in the eyes of some old guys. Not to mention, her mother was an idiot who was brainwashed by the bloodline theory. This family background was really weak as an heir. This was also the reason why Bruce wanted Sialuot to solve a family problem. But now Bruce knew that these were not needed anymore. In the conference room, looking at the golden soul that drew a golden trajectory in the air and manipulated freely like an extension of the spell, the Sorofia family master, Bruce, who was expressionless, blushed. He clenched his fists, and his eyes widened. He was obviously very excited. This is the living gold of the kingdom of Sorofia recorded in the ancient books? It's amazing. I didn't expect there to be such a cursed vessel in the world. Bruce was moved by the reappearance of the cursed vessel that carried the glory of his ancestors. However, what he didn't expect was that this was just the beginning. What followed was a series of novel curses, the ultimate expansion of the bloodline ability, the balance of fate, the general design structure and piloting method of the golden battleship, etc. Sialuot sent them one by one. Bruce went from excitement to surprise, and finally, he was completely numb. It couldn't be helped. The things that Sialuot presented were so shocking that Bruce couldn't react for a while. He could only ask his trusted scholar, Andrew, to quickly examine them. But in fact, even without the examination, Bruce knew that those lost supernatural curses and techniques were definitely not fake, because every one of them could vaguely resonate with his bloodline. There was no doubt that Sialuot had made a great contribution to the family this time. She had completely solved the dilemma of the House of Sorofia, which had been plaguing the family for hundreds of years. In terms of importance, it was far more important than the Fringe and Twinhorn Harbor. With these legacies, the House of Sorofia would be able to get rid of the predicament of relying on the supernatural families as their main fighting force within the next 10 years. They would truly become as prosperous as the angel family Heathcliff. Great contribution was no longer enough to describe Sialuot. It should be said that she had made a great contribution. With this achievement, Sialuot's position would no longer be shaken by anyone. She would definitely become the next leader of the House of Sorofia. With such a joyous occasion, the meeting room was filled with a harmonious atmosphere. The leaders of several important departments were very excited. However, the military, the one who applied these techniques, the old man sitting next to Bruce, was rather uncomfortable. Eugene Sorofia, the oldest member of the Sorofia family, was an old man who had personally experienced the war to establish the House of Sorofia 100 years ago. He was currently the representative of the Eagle faction who hated Austin to the core. He believed that the two countries would go to war. Therefore, he didn't like his descendant who had Austin's bloodline, especially when she was a woman. The identity of a woman was an unstable factor for a ruler. What if she had a screw loose like her mother and believed in some bullshit bloodline theory, and married into Austin with her country? Wouldn't that be a total loss? Xiao Luo's background made the suspicious old man very unhappy. Therefore, even though this discovery made him blush with excitement, there was no smile on his face. I can't believe you were able to discover the ruins of the kingdom of Sorophia all by yourself. Well done, said Eugene in a flat tone. This was the greatest compliment he could give to Xiao Luo. However, he didn't expect that this rare compliment would not be accepted. Chapter 188. In some ways, Rose's military was a very abstract organization. Normally, as a country's military, its foreign policy should follow the country's. For example, the Church of St. Maester was at odds with Austin, so the military naturally wouldn't give them a good face. But in Rose there was a strange point. The military's foreign policy and diplomacy were separated. Rose was founded on commerce, and the Sorophia Chamber of Commerce was established all over the world. When doing business, the most important thing was to make money. Back then, Bruce's marriage was not only for diplomacy, but also to break into Austin's huge market and avoid being fleeced. However, different professions led to different philosophies. Businessmen needed to be friendly, but soldiers didn't have such good tempers. This was especially true for the Hawks, who had deep feuds. They really wanted Austin to die immediately. Thus, Rosetta's unique political characteristics came into play. Although the government wasn't particularly friendly with the Austin Empire, it was still tolerable. On the other hand, the military was engaged in mock battles every day, and whenever they had nothing to do, they would celebrate Memorial Day. They even mass-produced full-body portraits of General Austin, and gave them to the soldiers to practice their swordsmanship on, claiming that it would increase the morale of the soldiers. As for the successor, Xiao Luo, the military represented by Eugene, made a lot of sarcastic remarks. Xiao Luo wasn't only disliked by his mother, but also disliked by the elders in Sorophia. However, this situation had now changed. Xiao Luo was going to marry the only son of the Akat family, and it wasn't a formal marriage. It was the kind that dared to steal people. According to Sorophia's origin substance, this situation was basically a dead end. When he heard this news, the way Eugene looked at Xiao Luo changed. Akat territory was Rose's longtime military ally, and the Church of St. Maester was a sworn enemy of the Austin Empire. Xiao Luo's choice was basically cutting off all ties with the Austin Empire. Marriage alliance, Austin no Akat very good. Inside the conference room, the white-haired Marshal Eugene patted Xiao Luo's shoulder, as if he was looking at a filial grandson. His stern old face actually revealed a smile that had never been seen before. There was no trace of the dignified look he had when he jumped out to reprimand Xiao Luo a few seconds ago. This huge contrast made everyone present look at each other. Bruce wasn't surprised at all. Rather, he already knew that things would develop like this. After Xiao Luo brought Luoya back to France, the first thing she did was to seek support from her father, Bruce. As the de facto ruler of France, Xiao Luo could only withstand the enormous pressure from the theocracy if Bruce was truly on her side. When he saw the reddish-haired girl lowering her head and pleading, Bruce had mixed feelings. Xiao Luo was already 13 years old, and Xia had matured very quickly due to the magic element in her body. She would be considered an adult at 14 years old. Although most nobles generally delayed marriage for 2 to 4 years, that didn't stop Xiao Luo from choosing her sweetheart in advance. As a father, Bruce naturally couldn't bear to see his daughter fall in love with someone else. But when he recalled the life he had with Xiao Luo over the years, Bruce could only sigh helplessly. It was true that Adelisa wasn't a qualified mother, but what about Bruce? Come to think of it, Bruce had spent very little time with Xiao Luo over the past 10 years. He didn't show much warmth to her. Instead, he used to exert pressure on her. Xiao Luo was also very independent. She had never asked Bruce for anything since she was a child. Even when the development of the fringe wasn't going well, she endured it. Today, however, was the first time his daughter had asked him for a favor. Was there a need to ask what he needed to do? At that moment, Bruce realized that he might indeed need to leave his limited time for the Empire. But that didn't stop him from fulfilling his responsibilities as a father. At the very least, he had to step in for his daughter's happiness at the most critical moment. Therefore, He called for this meeting to let the representatives of the various factions witness Xia Luo's great achievements and irreplaceable qualities. It had to be said that the meeting was a great success. With Xia Luo's achievements and the confirmation of her status as the successor, the various factions' attitudes towards Xia Luo had changed. They were more respectful and more amiable. After analyzing Luoya's incident in detail, they generally maintained a wait-and-see attitude. Of course, it was rare for the military to have a 180-degree change in attitude. Bruce didn't expect that Xia Luo's engagement would make these old fogies so happy. But thanks to this, Xia Luo's support had increased, and it was a very strong one at that. Regarding the engagement, everyone present agreed to keep it a secret for the time being. Eugene was rather dissatisfied with this. He believed that the engagement should be announced to the entire city, and that it would be best if the engagement could be held tomorrow. As for what Akkad would do, Eugene was prepared to personally negotiate with him. Fortunately, Bruce didn't approve of such a radical idea. Now that Lo She had just received the inheritance of the Sophia dynasty's ancestors, there were still many things he needed to do. Therefore, he tried his best to minimize the impact of this meeting. In fact, Bruce's messenger was already on his way. After the meeting was over, everyone went back to work. The red-haired girl in the middle of the room looked around and heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that Lo She's matter was settled for now. But that didn't mean that the crisis was over. Instead, it was the beginning of a series of tests. Next, there would be external interference. Thinking of the two girls, Xia Luo slowly clasped his hands. Luoya Akkad had always felt that his psychological quality was quite good. Or rather, he felt that he was a very Buddhist person. Regardless of whether it was the fact that his future was bleak after transmigrating, or the fact that he was able to calmly deal with several life and death crises, it all proved that he had a big heart. Although he was occasionally a little flustered, it did not affect his actions. When he felt that he had to do something, when he stepped onto the stage, his performance was basically extraordinary. However, even with such a firm heart, Luoya had to admit that he couldn't be Buddhist anymore. He had been kidnapped. How could he still be Buddhist? Looking at the unfamiliar ceiling for the umpteenth time, the black-haired boy had a rough understanding of his situation. It had been 5 minutes since he woke up. In these 5 minutes, Luoya carefully observed the surrounding situation, and could basically confirm one thing. That was this should be Lo She's or Xia Luo's home. To be more precise, this was her bedroom. The evidence was that the Milky Way on the ceiling was exactly the same as the one in the jewel necklace fleet, but it was more delicate, and the blessing was more effective and gentle. On the other hand, the faint golden light on the pillow also reminded Luoya. Chapter 189. While Rosetta City was bustling, Roha was doubting his life and praying silently in the mist bedroom. Thousands of miles away, Akate City was quite calm. But this calm was the happiness of ordinary people, but it was the misfortune of those who knew about it. Luoya Akkad, the acting lord of the Akkad family, the chief planner who led the people to become rich in the past few years, the only heir of the next generation, and the owner of many important titles, was now missing. To be honest, this was something that no one dared to write about in this era's story. Luoya was kidnapped by the young lady of the neighboring Luosu. This was a fact that the upper echelons of the Akkad family were unwilling to and could not tell the people. Even if there were rumors in the border area, the Akkad family would never admit it. Instead, they had to pinch their noses and deny it. That's right, losing a lord was so shameful. Once the news spread, the nobles in the Holy Land would not like the Akkad family, and the Akkad family would definitely mock and ridicule them. Most importantly, once this matter became a diplomatic issue, then it would escalate to the level of a country, and there would definitely be some forces that would come to discuss them. For example, the Austin Empire. This was the common goal of the Akkad family, Heidi Krete's royal family, and the unreasonable kidnapper Sorophia. However, at this moment, the Akkad family's mansion was eerily silent. In the conference room, Ai Lizzie and Nua Iyer were sitting on the left and right sides of the long table. The blonde girl held the armrest of the chair with a gloomy expression, while the silver-haired girl pointed at the princess and trembled with anger. 5 days ago, Nua Air released news about Xia Luo's suspected kidnapping of Luoya. When AI Lizzie saw it, she was shocked, but then she was full of questions. The silver-haired girl really did not understand why Xia Luo would do this. One had to know that Sophia's status as the young lady's fiancé had always been as stable as Mount Tai before Noel had rushed over. This time, the princess had gone to deliver a heavy blow. How could she run away before the punch had even landed? AI Lizzie was puzzled, but she did not dare to delay and immediately set off for home. According to the last part of the letter, Nua Air had led the troops to chase after Sophia. Judging from the distance and time, the princess would be able to catch up with them before the border. In other words, although this incident seemed scary, the result should be scary but not dangerous. After making this judgment according to the content, AI Lizzie did not panic. Instead, she was very happy. Regardless of the reason, Xia Luo had made this big mistake, to the extent that even her identity as the fiancé could not cover it. It can be said that after this incident, the fiancé incident will come to an end. Sophia will be swept into the garbage by the Akate family, and will have nothing to do with Roja. Alright, I'll deal with one more. With this thought in mind, AI Lizzie returned to the Akate family. However, she did not expect to see Luoya's familiar face when she returned. Instead, she saw Nua Air's extremely gloomy face, followed by one bad news after another. This made the silver-haired girl understand one thing, and that is AI Lizzie's elder brother was really lost. Didn't you say that you could catch up? Where is the person you caught up with? I did catch up with her, but it's just a bait. Oh, a bait? Don't joke around, even if it's a bait. Sophia can't be faster than you in this kind of winter. What happened? Under AI Lizzie's angry interrogation, the princess's face became more and more unsightly. She was silent for a long time. Thinking of the soldiers who were with her, she finally opened her mouth and told the truth. Nua Air actually caught up with her, and she was indeed the winner in this race of life and death in the Akate family territory. However, what the princess and everyone else did not expect was that Xia Luo changed the game to werewolf and successfully pretended to be a villager. When Nua Air led a large group of people into the mountains for half a day, what they saw was not Sophia's exquisite mountain carriage, but a group of local villagers who were hunting. Looking at those part-time hunters who were trembling in fear, the princess immediately understood that they had fallen into a trap. At that moment, Nua Air's brain went numb. She recalled the old woman who spoke to her in front of the village, and suddenly remembered a very important question. That old woman, she didn't have any spell fluctuations on her body. So Nua Air just glanced at her and categorized her as a normal person. However, Nua Air forgot that it wasn't the holy capital where the living conditions were good, but a remote village in the mountains in the south. In this era, due to various reasons such as inconvenient transportation, high physical labor, and lack of medical treatment, the life expectancy of the people in this area was generally lower than that of the city. It was considered good for a village to have one such old person, and because of living in such a harsh environment for so many years, their bodies were almost passively mutated to become transcendents. The reason why the village head was filled with old people in the meeting was not only because these old people were experienced, but also because these seemingly weak old people were probably the best fighters in the village. They didn't become transcendents because they were old, but because they became transcendents, they could live to old age. However, the old woman that Nua Air saw at that time didn't have any spell fluctuations on her body. Unless the princess was lucky enough to meet someone who could live to old age by relying on luck, there was only one possibility, and that was this person's spell fluctuations had to be eliminated. This person was Xia Luo. When she understood all this, Nua Air felt a chill in her heart. She wanted to turn back, but she didn't have the strength to chase after her. Xia Luo had calculated everything in half a day, so how could she have the chance to escape? By the time she caught up, Luoya and the others had already crossed the border of Russia. This time, I was too impatient and didn't think things through, so she took advantage of the loophole. The blonde girl recalled the previous experience and clenched her teeth. Her eyes were emotionless, but the anger hidden under the calmness stunned AI Lizzie. But if Xia Luo thinks that this is the end, then she is too naive and underestimated me. As Luoya's protector, her actions directly challenge my authority and Heathcrete's authority. She must bear the consequences of her actions. What do you want to do? Chapter 190. Southwest of Rosetta City, in the vast Sorophia Manor, the sound of birds chirping in the morning came from outside the window. Xia Luot Sorophia stood by the window, puzzled. The refreshing sunlight shone on the girl's body, and her long brown-red hair was like a dancing flame. It had been 2 hours since she showed her harvest in the conference room. Xia Luot was worried about Luoya, so she naturally wouldn't stay in the joint council hall for long. She was rushing home because according to the situation of the curse, Luoya should wake up this morning. 3 days ago, since Xia Luot activated the curse to make Luoya faint on the mountain, the brown-red-haired girl had been in a state of anxiety. Using such a method to forcibly take Luoya away, not only was the reaction of the outside world a problem, but Luoya's own attitude was also a problem. In this world, although the ability and status of women were not lower than men because of magic and extraordinaries, the dignity of a ruler was still very important. And Luoya was a de facto ruler. Akate territory was vast, and its military strength and population were even far greater than that of a small country. Under the feudal system, it was completely like an independent small kingdom. As the acting feudal lord of such a young power, Luoya's self-esteem couldn't be more natural. Xia Luot used such a rude method to take Luoya away this time, so the backlash was likely to destroy the relationship between the two. Although she understood each other's character, the cautious girl still didn't dare to take risks. She could only seize the opportunity to make up for it, just like what she promised Luoya under the starry sky. House of 100 Birds. This was the name of the manor located in the southwest corner of Rosetta, covering a large area and even having a large garden. In the past, this place was used as the command center for street battles after the city was breached. There were troops stationed nearby all year round, but after 100 years of peace, they gradually withdrew their defenses. Now it was the headquarters of the Sorophia family. However, there were only Bruce and Xia Luot in this house. Bruce had been busy with work all year round, so this house had almost become Xia Luot's single-person residence. The name of the 100 Birds Garden was derived from the hundreds of mutated bird-type creatures in this manor. At the very beginning, this place was used as a command post to communicate with the entire city. The archery skills and power of the soldiers of this world were aided by curses. Usually, ordinary messenger pigeons would be shot to death on the spot. As a last resort, Loche could only purchase domesticated bird-type monsters. Not only did she have to increase the quantity, but she also had to consider the unique effects of various curses. Sorophia also tried her best to increase the variety of bird species. The war between Austin and Loche lasted for a long time, so naturally, she bought more and more bird species. By 100 years ago, there were already hundreds of species. Then they all lost their jobs. Xia Luot's childhood could be said to have grown up in the company of servants and these birds. Therefore, the girl liked this place very much and hoped that her lover would like it as well. Also, from the perspective of recuperation, it was good for the body and mind to see animals often. But what made Xia Luot puzzled was that Luoya's situation was different from what she had imagined. "My dear, are you still not awake?" How could? Hearing the words of the servants outside the door, the red-haired girl quickly walked into the room and came to the luxuriously decorated bed. This bedroom was Xia Luot's absolute private domain. Until now, no man had ever entered. Even the servants had to wait for orders or use curses to communicate outside the room. The only one who had the authority to knock on the door was Galacy. But now there was an intruder in this private domain. Xia Luot looked down at the sleeping black-haired boy. Her expression was gentle but also a little worried. Why can't he wake up? Was it a mistake in controlling the curse power? Or is it because Luoya's body is weak? The young mistress frowned in confusion. Just as she was about to take a closer look, she suddenly realized that the small bottle beside Luoya's pillow was a little out of place. It was a stabilizer that contained the golden soul that Xia Luot had temporarily refined. She had set aside a portion of her curse power to stabilize Luoya's body when she wasn't around. But now, the placement of this small bottle was a little different from what she remembered. Mm. I remember that I placed it vertically, right? It's actually horizontally. This is looking at the glowing bottle. The red-haired girl couldn't help but smile. She didn't make a sound and just quietly approached. Then, she reached out and gently pinched the nose of the sleeping boy. As the saying goes, no one can wake up a person who is pretending to be asleep. Xia Luo agreed with this saying. But people can't, but the air has no obstruction or effect. 5 seconds passed, 10 seconds passed. When Xia Luo counted to 15 in her heart, the sleeping black-haired boy suddenly opened his eyes quietly. His golden pupils met the girl's emerald eyes. Then he reached out and gently patted Xia Luo's hand. Uft! Looking at Luoya's actions, Xia Luo let go of her hand and couldn't help but chuckle. The black-haired boy didn't reprimand her. He sat up with a smile and a calm tone, as if he had just woken up and didn't know what was going on. Good morning, Miss Xia Luo. It's been a long sleep. Where are we today? The black-haired boy looked at the girl in front of him and asked with a smile. His attitude and smile were perfect and polite, but the red-haired girl's heart skipped a beat when she saw this. Politeness was a weapon that Luoya hadn't used against Xia Luo for a long time. This weapon used to be the most powerful shield when they met, and it was also the perfect protection that outsiders couldn't find fault with. However, that was in the past, and the relationship between the two of them was no longer the same as it was a month ago. Now that Luoya was acting like this, it could only mean one thing, and that was that he was angry. The black-haired boy was being polite, because he felt that the relationship between the two of them had deteriorated to the point where he needed to use etiquette to maintain it. It was like two countries signing an armistice agreement. Both sides wanted the other side to die, but on the surface, they had to put on a smile and hide their anger deep in their hearts. Of course, Luoya's situation wasn't that serious, but Xia Luo took it seriously. Or rather, it was the reason why she rushed back this time. My dear, you said that you would forgive me. Facing Luoya's silent reprimand, the noble young lady was silent for a moment and lowered her head. Her voice was choked with sobs, and the black-haired boy couldn't help but relax, but then he hardened his heart and straightened his face. Today, Xia Luo was dressed formally in a long dress because she was going to attend a meeting. Wrapped in a light blue dress, the girl had a steady charm that was different from the past. The earrings on her ears and the necklace on her neck were carefully matched with the dress. Her scattered red-brown hair swayed around her slender neck, making her look a little sexy. Chapter 191. Luoya was a tolerant person. This was the definition he gave to himself recently. In Xia's world, which was full of extraordinary powers and grotesque, there were too many things that were different from Luoya's previous world. The power of money was actually limited, but there were also some things that were the same in this world. For example, Luoya was poor. When the black-haired young man saw the golden mountain shining under the sun in the early morning, the desire for wealth from 2 lifetimes was like a flood that broke through the dam. It wasn't just the desire that he suppressed for so many years, but also the relief of being able to return the money. The loan was like a mountain. Wherever you went, it would move. You could ignore it, but it would always be there, and it would even grow taller. The system loan with the monthly interest of 30,000 gold coins had always been a shadow that Luoya couldn't get rid of. As for the initial loan that might cause the system to shut down, it was like a hand that was strangling Luoya's throat. As long as he could get rid of these 2 big troubles, Luoya would forgive Xia Luo. In the end, he didn't really hold a grudge against Miss Xia Luo. It was just that he didn't want to lose face, and this matter was really ridiculous. But now that he had a cart of gold coins, Luoya changed his mind. What? Kidnapped to Rose? It was complete nonsense. Akkad's special price acting feudal lord, Mr. Luoya, now felt that this matter wasn't ridiculous at all. He even began to consider whether this matter should be classified as an emergency diplomatic matter. To the outside world, it was fine to pay him to come to Rose. In short, the black-haired young man gave in. I wanted to refuse, but she gave me too much. Luoya thought as he silently accepted Xia Luo's compensation. Using this as an opportunity, he couldn't keep a straight face anymore. It was better to say that he couldn't keep a straight face. By the way, is it okay if I just take these gold coins? Of course, dear. If you like, You can just leave them here. There's no need for that. Although it felt good to wake up and look at the gold mountain every day, the thought of returning more than half of the luo made his heart ache. As the saying goes, it's better to get it over with quickly than to prolong the pain. Since he had to return it anyway, he might as well do it right from the start. Out of sight, out of mind, Luoya thought as she got out of bed. Xia Luo waved her hand to signal the servants who were pushing the cart to leave the room. The young man strolled to the side of the gold cart with the girl's help and silently stretched out his black hole-like hands. He couldn't take it away, but he could take it away. The young man sighed, trying to find joy in his misery. The next moment, a scene that even the experienced and knowledgeable Xia Luo could not believe appeared. In the blink of an eye, less than half of the gold mountain was left. It was simply a miracle of physics. The reddish-brown-haired girl looked at the mountain of gold coins that had shrunk by half. She pondered for a while but still couldn't understand. Xia's world was still very stable. Space spells were mysterious and had no practical use at all. Most of the related items were also blank. The gemstone necklace fleet was already considered the best in this aspect. Although she was puzzled, Xia Luo did not ask. The girl understood that everyone had their own secrets. As a descendant of an ancient family, Luoya was even more so. To a certain extent, he was willing to do this in front of Xia Luo because he trusted her. But trust was trust, and Xia Luo did not want to ask. The girl pondered on the side, but she did not know that Luoya's mind was not on this matter at all. Gold coins accepted. According to loan restrictions, mortgage loans will be repaid first. Mortgage loans have been cancelled. Detected host's balance. Proceeding with repayment. Interest loans have been cancelled. Loan repayment completed. A total of 650,000 gold coins have been consumed. Host's reputation level has increased. It's not difficult to borrow again. It's better to be friends than to be friends for a long time. This system will travel with the host all the way. After reading the large number of notifications that popped up in the system after the repayment of the gold coins, Luoya's eyebrows twitched. It took him a long time to suppress the overwhelming feeling in his heart. What's wrong? You fucking loan shark, and now you're expressing your feelings? If it weren't for Xia Luo, how would I repay you the interest of 30,000 gold coins a month? Luoya, who was supported by the girl, could not openly complain. He could only sit by the bed and gasp for breath. He looked at the mountain of gold that had shrunk by more than half. But soon the young man defeated his selfish desires and thought things through. Chapter 192. How long has it been since the system was active? This was a question worth pondering over for Luoya. Why did Luoya always tease him that his system was a French system? Not only because the system gave off a sense of surrender, but it was also because of the laziness of a French aristocrat. That's right, as a passive system, it would only react when something obvious happened in Luoya's life. The last time it appeared was when Luoya returned from the holy capital 200 years ago. After that, the young man's life fell into a peaceful state. Every day he would stay at home to study and build infrastructure. Luoya's system didn't have any activity after that. After returning from the sea, Luoya thought that there would be an event waiting for him. However, the system stood him up. From then on, he suspected that it was because of the loan problem. Until today, his guess was confirmed. Ding! Loan repayment complete detected. Event system restarted. 10%, 20%, 30%. Activation complete. Opening new event. Debt crisis memorial event. Courage and wisdom are the keys to overcoming difficulties. However, wealth can also save lives. After overcoming the waves of the financial crisis, your future will be a peaceful harbor. Hehe, not bad. You won't release the falcon until you see the hare. In other words, the reason there was no event before was because I owed money? The system will be closed if you can't repay the loan. In order to help the host get rid of the temptation from various aspects and successfully repay the loan, the event page will be temporarily closed during the loan period. I hope the host can understand. Facing the system's rare lengthy explanation, Luoya fell into silence after pondering for a while. Indeed, When the system opened the event, the discount was too big. For Luoya, who liked to buy toilet paper at a discount in his previous life, the charm of the system was not ordinary. If he couldn't resist buying something else and couldn't pay back the money, causing the system to disappear, then he wouldn't even have a place to cry. Okay, anyway, it was meaningless to open it at that time. But it's different now. Luoya muttered to himself as he put down the teacup in his hand. He looked at the bright sunshine outside the window and stretched himself. It had been an hour since Xia Luo's golden gift mountain in the morning. The brown-haired girl did not dare to delay any longer after checking Luoya's condition. After Xia Luo's observation, the curse power in the small golden bottle placed beside Luoya last night was almost exhausted. It proved that this simple curse vessel was activated at least once at night. In fact, because of rushing through the night, Xia Luo did not sleep last night and left Luoya for about 3 hours. There was an outbreak every 3 hours. This frequency made Xia Luo's face gloomy when the young man was not looking. After thinking about it again and again, she could only postpone the desire to take Luoya to relax. She focused on his condition and immediately began to produce more golden souls. During the time when Xia Luo left Luoya, the young man did not stay idle. After washing up and burning incense, he drank morning tea with the help of the servants and directed a cart of gold coins to be placed in front of the open balcony. When the golden sunlight shone into the room in the morning, the scene of birds falling from the glittering golden mountain and playing back and forth was deeply imprinted in Luoya's mind. It was an illusion of his previous life's wish coming true. It was a kind of satisfaction of financial freedom. Elegant, leisurely, overlooking the world. In this comfortable and peaceful morning, Master Luo's narcissism continued like this, until these birds began to fly away with the gold coins in their mouths. When he saw the battle pigeons in Sorofia's 100-bird garden taking away 2 gold coins, Luoya's face went blank. After that, he no longer had the mood to leisurely enjoy the scenery. What's going on? I was robbed by the birds? Forget about the people. Even Sorofia's birds dared to rob me? Luoya, who was inexplicably beaten up, was filled with anger. The chirping of the birds immediately attracted the attention of the nearby servants. In a moment, the butlers, servants, and guards rushed to disperse the flock of birds and fought with the battle pigeons. The entire battle lasted for less than 10 minutes. After that, several people immediately apologized to Luoya, who lost his property and promised to recover it. Forget it, it's just a few gold coins. If you don't want it, then don't. Looking at the anxious face of the butler with sweat on his forehead, Luoya thought for a moment and decided to shake his head and forget about this matter. Some birds like to collect things that glowed. This was their nature and not the responsibility of the servants. In the end, it was Luoya's fault for letting the gold coins bask in the sun. The young master of the Akot family didn't pursue this matter. This matter made the few people in charge let out a sigh of relief. At the same time, they couldn't help but raise their evaluation of Luoya. Just like the servant organization in the Akot mansion, Sorofia's 100-bird garden also had its own organization to a certain extent. They were the team that took care of Xia Luo for many years. Since Xia Luo was young, they had accompanied this child who lacked the love of parents all the way until she grew up. Regarding the fiancé that their miss suddenly brought back home, these people were also full of curiosity and concern. Without a doubt, through this small matter, Luoya left a very good impression on the servants of the 100-bird garden. The identity of the young master of the Akot family, handsome appearance, gentle temperament, and tolerant attitude. With such a combination of skills, even the servants of the Sorofia family, who were used to seeing young talents, gave a unanimous praise. The only flaw was that this young master Luoya's body seemed to be a bit weak. Chapter 193. What does a staff with the original price of 1 million gold coins look like? Even after the discount, it's still worth 300,000 gold coins. There weren't many people in Xia who could answer this question, but today, Luoya was lucky enough to express his opinion. The black-haired boy sat on a chair at the end of the balcony, looking at the black wooden staff in his hand in a daze. In front of him, the gold coins that were once piled up together had once again disappeared without a trace. 300,000 gold coins in today's Xia was definitely a huge sum of money, even for the wealthy Luoya. But now, this money was condensed on this 1-meter-long staff. To be honest, Luoya felt that it was quite magical, but what made him even more confused was the shape of this thing. Thanks for the invitation. It's quite ugly, it's related to benefits, it's hidden. This was probably Luoya's evaluation of the appearance of the Hydra staff, or at least visually. This fierce weapon didn't surprise Luoya, and there was nothing special about it. It was just a black staff, and it even looked a bit like a random fireplace in the suburbs of a villager's house. Although there was a saying in Luoya's previous life, that these spiritual things would hide their own magical powers, it was normal for them to be inconspicuous. But now Luoya was in Xia, and there was no such rule among the humans in Xia. They had always been as ostentatious as possible. A staff in this era was mostly seen as an ornament, similar to the earrings and necklaces of ladies. However, if one traced its origin, it was actually an ancient scepter, a symbol of power, status, and strength. It wasn't something that could be held by just anyone, especially a staff made of precious materials. It could even represent royal power. Therefore, as an ancient weapon, the Hydra staff's origin must be noble, and it might even be a national treasure of a country. There was no reason for it to be made into a shiny fireplace stick. Unless the ruined referred to being thrown away, then Luoya had nothing to say. No, this is a little too ugly, isn't it? What exactly is this? Wait. Normally, extraordinary equipment would more or less have some curse power, even if it wasn't activated, but this Hydra staff didn't have any. In other words, it was extremely hidden and could be disguised as an ordinary item, and it could be worn in various important occasions without being stopped. In Xia, wizards couldn't bring their staffs into banquets under normal circumstances, just like knights couldn't bring their swords. But this Hydra staff looked like a staff, and it was classified as an ornament, so it could be said to jump out of the scope of protection. Luoya was very satisfied with this, and after observing the appearance, Luoya began to have new ideas. This Hydra staff might be a treasure that required curse power to activate, so he would have to use it in practice. After making up his mind, Luoya, who was full of expectations, left. While Xia Luot hadn't come back yet, he asked the servants to take him to the forest in the bird garden. The Sorofia family's courtyard, which covered a large area, showed its advantages at this time. At least, as a testing ground for equipment, there was probably no place more secretive and suitable than here in Rosetta City. After some preparations, Luoya looked at the servants who left under his orders and felt relieved. He took out the dark staff and tapped it on the ground. He closed his eyes slightly, and the curse power in his body flowed into the staff. The next moment a strange feeling appeared, and it also made the boy completely excited. The staff was absorbing his curse power, and it wasn't an ordinary absorption. It was like an unconscious egg hatching. Holding the staff in his hand, Luoya could feel his curse power gradually filling up. And with the nourishment of this curse power, the inconspicuous staff began to gradually change. In the tremor, layers of dark material peeled off from the staff, and a sparkling light began to shine, illuminating the surroundings. This is... The black-haired boy opened his eyes wide and carefully looked at the completely changed appearance of the staff in his hand, and found that there was a painting on it. It was a portrait with golden lines on a black background, and it had the ancient aura of the rock wall murals of the ancient Stone Age. The lines on the picture were quite simple, and it depicted a somewhat abstract monster. It was the Hydra from which the staff came. The crisscrossing body and the crisscrossing snake heads had a special beauty under the simple depiction. And with the change of appearance, the material of the staff also changed one by one. The originally hard body of the staff turned into a jade-like texture under the light, and the shell at the handle shattered, revealing a snake-eye gem. The imperceptible dark golden lines were inlaid on the staff like a river, and if one looked carefully, it seemed that there was dark golden blood flowing in it. It was ancient and majestic, deep and imposing, but it also revealed a dangerous aura that was hard to detect. The black-haired boy looked at the staff that had been reborn under his spell in a short period of time, and could not hide his shock. He then immediately looked at the system. Hydra staff incomplete. Activated. Poisonous Beast King. The poison of the ancient terrifying monster still remains in its corpse. Use the curse power to extract it. The dosage and strength of the poison change according to the amount of curse power. Rebirth body. Use the curse power to stimulate the regeneration ability in the corpse of the Hydra, so that the body of the ancient monster reappears in the world. The strength changes according to the amount of curse power. Looking at the equipment skills that suddenly appeared in the system, Luoya's mood was better. It turned out that you get what you pay for. The system didn't waste the 300,000 gold coins he spent. The Hydra staff was indeed a powerful curse vessel. After understanding this, the boy couldn't help but be eager to try it. Now Luoya was in the bird's garden of Serophia's family. The first skill, Poisonous Beast King, was the skill to control poison. It obviously needed to be tested on live subjects. It was easy to find test subjects here. There were hundreds of birds, and they were all monsters. However, after thinking about it, Luoya dismissed the idea. After all, this was Xia Luo's home. Although these birds were free-range, they were still pets to some extent. It was impolite to kill them casually. Moreover, the birds in the bird's garden accompanied Xia Luo in her lonely childhood when she was young. When he thought of this, Luoya's heart softened. Forget it, I'll spare your lives. Luoya looked at all kinds of birds on the nearby branches, shook his head, and began to focus on the second skill. Without affecting his body, Luoya slowly began to inject the curse power. At the same time, the end of the staff began to tremble and squirm, changing and extending. Just when Luoya felt that the staff was about to turn into a hydra, a familiar call suddenly sounded in his ears. "Little guy, what are you doing?" It was the voice of Paitila. Chapter 194. In the forest, a young man holding a jade cane with black and gold patterns stood on the grass, surrounded by a flock of birds. The sunlight from the sky penetrated the shade of the trees and shone on his body, adding a bit of warmth to the young man's already gentle temperament. The external environment was very quiet and comfortable, and the handsome young man standing there was also very eye-catching and vivid. However, at this time, Luoya's heart was completely different from his appearance. He was in a state of shock. "Paitila? Is that you?" "Of course it's me. Long time no see. Little guy, how have you been recently? This shouldn't be considered good." Listening to Paitila's somewhat smiling voice, Luoya helplessly glanced at his current body. It had been more than a week since he left the historical fragment, but Luoya's situation did not improve much. Although Luoya did not say this, he was still a little anxious. However, the focus now was obviously not in this regard. "Paitila, why did you come out? Is something the matter?" "Yes, I felt a somewhat familiar aura, so I came out to take a look. I didn't expect to see this kind of thing." Her Majesty Queen's voice was somewhat nostalgic and emotional. Luoya could feel that she was checking the cane in his hand. Seeing this, the young man's heart moved, and he asked about the origin of the world snake queen and the Hydra. "Strictly speaking, it can be considered my descendant. After all the snakes in this world can be considered my descendant. However, unlike us holy beasts, this kind of monster doesn't have any source substance. Although it's powerful, it doesn't have a specific spiritual will. It can only follow the instincts of a living creature. I killed it." Luoya could not help but ask about Paitila's last words. After that, the young man heard an ancient story from Her Majesty Queen. It was a conflict between factions within the holy beasts. It was the first group of indigenous peoples dispute over source after Shia created the world. An ancient existence like Paitila was inevitably involved and became the representative of the source faction. In contrast, the non-source faction returned to the nature of animals and pursued strength and wildness. One of the representatives of snake creatures was the Hydra. In Roha's previous life, no matter what field, the issue of the path was a very serious topic. But in this world, there were fierce contradictions and irreconcilable conflicts between the Shinno 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 Shinno. No Shinno 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 Shinno. In the end, All source of source was Wuxia. Just like how the ancient gods of the source would affect the creatures downstream. In ancient times, as long as a source was used, Wuxia could not be avoided. However, unlike the evil gods, Wuxia, as the primordial goddess, not only did she not control these children who came later, but she also blessed them. She gave wisdom to the foolish so that they could understand the world. And she gave strength to the weak, so that they could gallop across the land. Wuxia used the source to help millions of creatures. She was a kind mother, so she was respectfully called the primordial goddess. After listening to Peitila's words, Luoya could not help but nod. Indeed, there was no lack of wise people in any era. There must be a reason why Wuxia was recognized and respected by all the races. And the biggest reason was that she had benefits. To put it bluntly, no one here was an idiot. In the ancient times before civilization developed, the various species were all very pragmatic. It would be impossible to achieve anything by just talking without any tangible benefits. Even the giants, who obviously didn't put any points into intelligence, weren't that easy to fool. For example, Gulandair usually looked dull and honest, but in fact it was because he was not good with words. If you really tried to trick him, this big guy would definitely use his hardest fist to teach you the wisdom of the giants. He would slap your face flat. In the beginning, the conflict among the holy beasts was because some of the monsters did not want to play according to the rules set by Wuxia. In the process of evolution, their bestial nature gradually got out of control. The chaotic magic elements without source control made them even more irritable, like electrical appliances leaking everywhere. In the end, war broke out. As the mother goddess and the king of the holy beasts, Peitila personally participated in the battle with the Hydra, and succeeded in killing it. The war at that time was very tragic. It's not a good memory for me. Sorry, I don't know this. After listening to Queen's story, the black-haired young man looked at the cane in his hand uncomfortably. He thought about it and asked tentatively, Peitila, this cane is made from its corpse. You won't be angry, right? Huh? Hee little guy, you think too much. Dead is dead. It doesn't make sense to be entangled with the corpse. Don't you humans often use the bones of the same kind to make curse vessels? Ugh, this. Luoya listened to Queen's answer and was dumbfounded for a while. In fact, in the current human world, it was already illegal to use the same kind of body to make curse vessels. Anyone who dared to enter the city with a human skull would definitely be stopped for questioning. With the development of the times, more and more new curse vessel materials were discovered and applied. Human bones, which were not a high-quality material, were no longer necessary. However, Luoya did not intend to explain to Peitila. As long as Queen did not pursue him for playing with snakes, everything else was fine. What he did not expect was that there was an unexpected gain in this matter. But I have to say, with this equipment, it will be much more convenient for me to help you. AI. My body is too big. If you want to use curse power to construct my body in the modern world, then your strength would have to be at least origin grade 3 or above. But now that I have this, the situation is different. Peitila said so happily. Then a dim yellow light suddenly appeared on the black-haired young man. Luoya only felt the familiar curse power warming his body. At the next moment, the end of the Hydra cane suddenly turned into a golden snake. It was a beautiful golden snake with a unique appearance and the texture of gemstones in the vein. It was not big. It was too small compared to Peitila's mountain-like body in Luoya's mind. However, Luoya could feel that the curse power of this golden snake was the same as the python in the mortal world. The mystery and majesty in its eyes were not reduced at all. The black-haired young man looked at the golden snake looking up at him in front of him, stunned. At the same time, the system prompts began to sound continuously. Chapter 195. 3 days later, in the main hall of the 100 Birds Hall, a black-haired youth was having afternoon tea with Charlotte surrounded by golden light. The rich fragrance emitted from the teacup made people feel relaxed and happy. However, above the slightly rising steam, the owner of the teacup didn't have a very good expression. Luoya took a sip of tea and recalled the situation of the past 3 days. On the day he exchanged for the Hydra staff, Luoya and Peitila had a long chat. The ancient Earth Mother had asked about Luoya and Xiaoluot and recommended her blessings. The Earth Mother was a god who controlled the earth and controlled the harvest in ancient times. At the same time, she also represented fertility and reproduction. She was the representative of the female gods. Therefore, in Peitila's view, reproduction was one of the most important things and needed to be strongly supported, especially in the case of Luoya. There was only one left in the family? How could that be? No, she had to give birth. She had to give birth. Not only that, she had to give birth more. After listening to Peitila's blessing for reproduction, Luoya felt that in scientific terms, it was to promote ovulation in women, and then give men strong reproductive abilities. With one complete receptor and one strong attack, pregnancy was only natural. Moreover, there was more than one. This blessing will have different effects depending on the race, bloodline, talent, and strength of the blessed person. According to Peitila's explanation, if this blessing for reproduction was applied to an old sow, it would probably be a domineering pig mother who could give birth to 10 treasures in one go. However, if it was applied to a human, it was naturally impossible. After all, the biological structure determined that it was impossible to give birth to so many children. Moreover, the more advanced the bloodline and talent, the more concentrated the blessing would be. Based on the bloodline of you and that little girl, twins should be the limit. Miss Peitila analyzed seriously and began to plan the postnatal arrangements for Luoya. The black-haired young man's eyebrows twitched, and he hurriedly asked this great aunt to stop talking. Please, how old is Xiaoluot? Why would she want to bear my child? Luoya's face turned red as she complained. Peitila, who was preparing to show his skills after so many years, was quite confused. Was that not the case? When you two are together, the smell of estrus is very strong. Isn't mating very normal? Her Excellency Queen walked in circles on the ground in confusion. Soon she came to a realization. Then she looked at Luoya with a gentle expression in her eyes. Child, it's all right. My blessings are specially for males. You don't have to feel inferior. You can do it. Wait, what should I say? Who says I can't do it? I could have done it. I can do it very well. After listening to the two sentences, Luoya, who felt that something was wrong, blushed and hurriedly denied it. Under the comforting gaze of the World Snake Queen, he wished that he could take off his pants on the spot to prove his innocence. After that, Peitila was like a mother urging him to get married, repeatedly emphasizing the necessity of reproduction to him, and carried out a series of criminal instigation. Didn't you sleep together at night? If you bring it up, she probably won't refuse. We did it to reduce the side effects. Believe me, when mating the contact area is larger and deeper, the effect will be better. What you said is so reasonable that I can't refute it. After ancient god Yellowstorm once again used the correct theory to hammer the innocent youth's nerves of shame, Xiaoluot sent a timely message. When Luoya saw this, he hurriedly rushed back to the manor to prepare for treatment, and also ended his meeting with Peitila. However, at that time, he didn't expect that the results of this consultation and treatment were not satisfactory. Over the past 3 days, Luoya met many high-level extraordinaries under the lead of Xiaoluot. Among them, there were a few well-known conjurers. Among them, the most knowledgeable one was the itinerant scholar, Andrew Mara. Andrew Mara, source level 2, was already more than 100 years old this year. He was born in an ordinary family in the country of scholars. When he was young, there was nothing special about him. His grades in the academy were average. His original life trajectory should have been an ordinary civil servant in the country of scholars, but Andrew had some different interests and hobbies. He liked to travel. After going to school, Andrew didn't stay at home like other scholars. Instead, he began to travel to various countries to increase his knowledge. Since 100 years ago, he had been patrolling the periphery of the human world and excavating ruins. He had joined many famous adventurer groups and had constantly accumulated knowledge and gradually stood out. After returning to the academy, he had been invited by many teachers, but in the end, he chose to follow the leader of the adventurer group, Bruce, back to Rose. Andrew was a late bloomer. Roja wasn't surprised by this. As the saying goes, read 10,000 books and walk 10,000 miles. Andrew can be said to be the standard practitioner of this sentence. Those geniuses who stayed in the laboratory all day may have done the first one, but they didn't put it into practice. In the end, they didn't do anything. As a practitioner who relied on his life to obtain his talent and bloodline to fight for it, Luoya could be said to be on the same path as Andrew. He felt very close to this old man. As Bruce's aide, Andrew had watched Xiao Luo grow up. The relationship between the two was like that of a grandfather and a grandson. Because of this, Andrew also had a good impression of Luoya. A good doctor-patient relationship was an advantage, but unfortunately, this advantage didn't translate into health this time. Child, there's something wrong with your situation. When the old man with a white beard spent 3 days studying Luoya inside out and said this conclusion, which seemed to be the subtext of, "You are hopeless," Luoya was a little dumbfounded. At the same time, Xiao Luo was anxious. However, before the two of them could ask, Andrew had already explained. According to Andrew, Luoya's problem of life exhaustion was actually an ancient disease. Chapter 196. Good evening, Miss Xiao Luo. It's been a while since we last met at Akot Mansion. Did your deal with your brother go well? Miss Ai Lizzie, it's been a while. You look great. It seems that even without Luoya's company, you can still sleep well. In a lavishly decorated banquet hall, a red-haired girl in a rose-colored dress and a silver-haired girl in a white dress were looking at each other with a friendly smile on their faces. They greeted each other warmly. Around them, amidst the clear but not frivolous music, men and women in luxurious clothes toasted each other while guests danced on the dance floor. It was a scene of joy and harmony. Today was a memorable day for Wuxia. 100 years ago, the Austin Empire signed an armistice agreement with the Wuxia Mercantile United Nations under the watch of the representative of the theocracy, Akot, officially recognizing Wuxia as a country of equal diplomatic status. Without a doubt, this was a landmark victory recorded in the annals of history. It was the result of a century-long struggle by the people of Wuxia. This day was known as Liberation Day. It was the biggest commemorative day in Wuxia other than the national day when the country was founded. On this festive day, the sudden visit of a distinguished guest made the people of Wuxia celebrate. Lord Kadia of the Theocracy of Saint Maester, Akot, came to visit with his son to celebrate the festival with Wuxia. He also brought along a group of retired military officers, all of whom were centenarians who had participated in the founding of Wuxia. They were loyal allies who had fought in wars and shed blood. When the news came out, it could be said that the whole of Wuxia was shaken. Since noon, when they entered the city gate was filled with crowds of people. The people wanted to see what their neighbor, who had contributed greatly to the founding of Wuxia, but had kept a low profile for 100 years, looked like. It couldn't be helped. The Akot family was too mysterious. Before Luoya came, the Akot family and Wuxia had no connection except for the land. The 1,000-year-old aristocratic family and transcendent family were like a golden signboard that constantly attracted the attention of others. However, the Akot family had always kept a low profile, so the onlookers were only here to watch the show. What they did not expect was that they would really see something this time. She was a girl as beautiful as the silver moon hanging in the sky on a full moon night. Her silver hair was soft and delicate as if it was glowing. Her skin was flawless like a work of art. Even the most expensive Zella redstone could not compare to her eyes. The moment she appeared in front of people, the sun in the sky seemed to lose its color, leaving only silence and thrill in people's hearts. Of course, this only applied to the commoners and the young nobles who fell in love at first sight. As for the others, they paid attention to different things. The politicians paid attention to whether the sudden visit of the Akot family represented a new step forward in the relationship with the theocracy. The military paid more attention to the festival itself, and the old army Kadia brought along. Bruce, who knew what was going on, paid attention to the thoughts of the other party's patriarch, Kadia, while Xiao Luo naturally competed with Ai Lizzie. The red-haired girl looked at the harmonious atmosphere and couldn't help but sigh slightly. She had to admit that the Akot family's visit on Liberation Day was very smart. If it was any other time, with such a large-scale visit, The first problem would be that it would be difficult to hide. After all, the fact that Luoya was taken away couldn't be made public. The second problem was that no matter how good the relationship between the two families was, it was easy to cause a backlash. But now was the day of liberation, a day protected by history. The Akot family's large-scale visit was both unexpected and within reason. And on this day, the Akot family brought along a veteran army that had shed their blood for this land. This meant that the Akot family was in an invincible position. After this, no matter how forceful the Akot family was, or if they wanted to negotiate a compromise, Luo Chet would have to accept it. No matter how much Bruce wanted to help his daughter, he wouldn't be able to be forceful. She had to rely on herself. Xia Luo thought so as she clenched her fists. After the banquet began, she immediately went to visit Ka Dia and received a response. Akot family's patriarch, Ka Dia Akot. You must be Mr. Bruce's daughter. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Xia Luot. This was how Ka Dia introduced himself to Xia Luot. His words were very formal and his attitude was very cordial. But when she heard Ka Dia's words, the girl's heart immediately sank. It was fine if outsiders didn't know about it, but Ka Dia clearly knew that Xia Luot and Luoya had a century-old marriage contract. Strictly speaking, Xia Luot was Ka Dia's future daughter-in-law. But this time, when they met, the Marquis actually talked to her as if she was an outsider. He didn't even mention a word about the marriage contract. To be honest, this was the worst-case scenario that Xia Luot predicted. It didn't mean that he refused to marry her, but rather that he didn't acknowledge their relationship at all. Xia Luot, who felt bitter in her heart, forced herself to say a few polite words to Ka Dia and the others before leaving. She knew that things had just begun, and it was far from reaching the point where the outcome would be decided. But the huge pressure from Luoya's parents made her uneasy. And at this moment, the silver-haired girl met her on a narrow path. From the beginning of the greeting, the two girls were full of sarcasm. And as the conversation deepened, the two girls who had met once gradually began to see red. Miss Xia Luot, you seem to have a wide range of sightseeing. As expected of the eldest daughter of the Sorofia family, you even want to return home to see the scenery. It's just that Luoya wants to see the scenery of a foreign country. It's Sorofia's honor to have him here. Hehe, when you say see, are you referring to being kidnapped by some despicable people? Is this a unique custom of the French? Miss Ai Lizzie, please don't misunderstand. And in my opinion, isn't it despicable for some people to deliberately destroy the relationship between an engaged couple when they're not paying attention? Xia Luot's emerald eyes sharpened, and Ai Lizzie's crimson eyes shrank. The two looked at each other, and the laughter in their ears seemed to be getting further and further away. After a long silence, the silver-haired girl finally spoke again. Xia Luot, do you think you can do whatever you want? Do you think I'm weak in front of you? You have a chance, but it's only because I never took the initiative to attack before you came. This is my last warning. Return my brother to me immediately. Chapter 197. Rose's Council Hall was a new wonder building with only 100 years of history. The construction of the entire council hall cost millions of gold coins, which was the most expensive in all countries, and it was famous for two things. First, it covered a large area and even had a racetrack. Second, the banquet hall could be stargazed. The Sorofia family had a unique advantage in divination and prophecy, and these two were more or less related to astrology. Therefore, stargazing in the Rose area was an elegant thing, and it was also a common activity between couples. It was like a step before a confession. Xia Luot took Luoya to stargazing to some extent for this purpose. But tonight, the black-haired boy didn't watch the stars with the young lady, but enjoyed the night breeze on the balcony of the 100 Birds Hall. Looking at the tall and majestic building in the city center, and listening to the noise of the revelers in the distant streets, Luoya couldn't help but sigh slightly. He picked up the small wine jug on the table beside him and took a sip. Well, it was quite sweet. Tasting the specialty Pamela wine that Akot brought back, Luoya's mood calmed down a little. He was alone tonight, naturally, not because he was neglected or abused by Xia Luot. In fact, the young lady wanted to attend the banquet with him, But after thinking about it again and again, Luoya refused. There was no other reason except that Luoya's appearance could easily aggravate the conflict. If it was only Ai Lizzie who came to pick him up, then as the acting lord, Luoya wouldn't have to worry at all. But this time, it was Luoya's father, Kadia, who led the team. Luoya couldn't do it. In terms of relationship, Kadia was Luoya's father, and he was someone he had to respect. He was also the head of the family when he was a minor. In terms of status, Kadia was also a real marquis, which was much higher than Luoya, who was just an acting marquis. If Luoya showed up now, Kadia told him to go home immediately. What would Luoya do? Abandon Xiaoluot and leave immediately? Or did he defy his father's orders and insist on staying? It was obvious that neither option was good, so Luoya decided to hide. As the saying goes, running away was shameful, but it was useful. Luoya prayed for good weather and peace in the world, but he didn't know that on the other side, the atmosphere between the two girls was already dark and stormy. In the meeting hall, Xiaoluot and Ai Lizzie looked at each other. The two girls, who had perfect etiquette towards outsiders, still had smiles on their faces. They raised their glasses as if they were the best of friends. Their perfect appearance and beautiful friendship caused a commotion and whispers in the nearby crowd. Some of the noble ladies began to get excited, and the young talents couldn't help but steal glances at them worriedly. After all, in their eyes, the two girls were perfect targets to pursue. If they were to be internally digested, half of their peers in Rosetta City would be heartbroken. However, what they didn't know was that they didn't have a chance from the beginning. The two girls weren't just affectionate on the surface, but there was a murderous intent hidden under their smiles. Xiaoluot, do you think you can get elder brother just because you took him away from Akat Hill? Heh, your final struggle will only embarrass yourself even more. Whether it's a final struggle or a revival from the dead, these are still undetermined. But Miss Ai Lizzie, no matter how Luoya and I are, we are still engaged, but you don't seem to be the same, do you? The reddish-brown-haired girl smiled and shook her wine glass. She raised her head and looked at Ai Lizzie's narrowed eyes and asked, "You're just Luoya's adopted sister who isn't related by blood. Aren't you being too nosy? My love for elder brother is eternal. What does it matter if we aren't related by blood? It's just right, isn't it?" Sure enough, your goal isn't as simple as brother and sister. But unfortunately, in my eyes, you're not a threat. The reddish-brown-haired girl nodded in understanding and said lightly in front of Ai Lizzie, who was frowning, "Your relationship with Luoya is indeed deep. It's accumulated over the years. I can't compare, but unfortunately, you don't understand love. You're on the wrong path." Xiaoluot looked at the silver-haired girl with pity and looked in the direction of the 100-bird garden with gentle eyes. He's a very emotional person, but he's not a very sensitive person. He's not that delicate when it comes to relationships. Your kindness and love may seem obvious to others, but in the eyes of Luoya, who grew up with you, these can all be attributed to familial love. You think you've won, but in fact, you've lost from the beginning. Facing Xiaoluot's unreserved analysis, the silver-haired girl unconsciously lowered her head and clenched her fists. Without a doubt, Xiaoluot's words hit her where it hurts. But after careful consideration, Ai Lizzie's expression returned to normal. "I've said it before. I've never attacked before. No, that's why it doesn't matter what you do now." "It does." Ai Lizzie calmly and decisively denied Xiaoluot's assertion. She looked up at the silver moon in the sky, and her eyes shone brightly. 3 times. What? Elder brother missed me at least 3 times when you took him away, and he couldn't help but say it at least once. Chapter 198. Bishop Philip was an honest man. This was something that everyone in the Holy See knew. He was humble, courteous, and abided by the rules. He had always been a role model for the judges, and he also had outstanding achievements. A few years ago, when the Holy Capital was in turmoil during the New Year, Bishop Philip had found and protected the missing Princess Nua Iyer and young Master Luoya of the Akat family. This was the reason why he was chosen by Nua Iyer. Of course, what Bishop Philip didn't know was that he had an even greater contribution in the heart of Nua Iyer, And that was the scene of Nuwa Iyer and Luoya kissing while unconscious to the Akot family. In the eyes of Princess Nuwa Iyer, this was a fatal blow to Ai Lizzie, but the honest Philip didn't realize this. Sigh, isn't this the request of her family? This is what I should do. You don't know how anxious the little girl was at that time. The brother-sister relationship is deep, and the Akot family is united and harmonious. Philip sighed like this whenever he met someone, looking like an old single person who longed for the warmth of a family. And today, this feeling came again. Looking at Princess Nuwa Iyer flying towards the tall city in the distance under his spell, Bishop Philip remained silent. Philip and the other guards accompanying Princess Nuwa Iyer didn't know the reason for Princess Nuwa Iyer's personal visit to Ratchet. Before this, he always thought that Princess Nuwa Iyer wanted to secretly sign some agreement with Ratchet. It was only until Nuwa Iyer stood at the front of the car and looked at the city on the horizon while muttering Xia Luo's name that Philip finally understood. So that was the case. Indeed, outstanding people would often be attracted by equally outstanding people. There were very few people of the same age who could get along with the talented Princess Nuwa Iyer, and those of the same status could be counted with one's fingers. And Xia Luo of the Sorofia family was the most suitable one. No wonder this trip was so low-key. Princess Nuwa Iyer. She was here to visit a friend. They had traveled thousands of miles to come here, and their sisterhood was so deep. Philip looked at the blonde girl and sighed. No matter what era it was not easy to maintain a friendship across countries, especially in the context of a country. Personal friendship often involved greater interests, and any meeting would be magnified and interpreted. Her Royal Highness and Rose's Miss Xia Luo must be the same. However, despite all the difficulties, the Nuwa Iyer still came this time. If Philip remembered correctly, today should be Rose's Liberation Day. Her Royal Highness must have wanted to arrive on this day to give her friends a surprise. Unfortunately, because of Philip's schedule, she was delayed. Along the way, Philip could not help but sigh as he looked at the blonde girl who was trembling with clenched fists in the distance. Sigh, look at how anxious the child is. The guilt-ridden bishop no longer hesitated. He decisively stepped forward and cast a bloodline curse on the Nuwa Iyer, causing her to soar into the sky. Looking at the girl's figure flying into the distance, Philip was satisfied. This way, he would be able to catch up. To appear in front of Miss Xia Luo on Liberation Day. Was there a bigger surprise than this? The relationship between the heirs could to some extent determine the future relationship between the two countries. This time, his assistance was not only for the sake of the little sisters who had been separated for a long time, but also for the sake of the relationship between the two countries in the long run. Thinking of this, the middle-aged bishop showed a sincere smile on his face. May our friendship last forever. Today was not a peaceful day in Rosetta City. In the context of Liberation Day, the citizens were singing and drinking to their heart's content. In the council hall, unexpected guests also brought the atmosphere of the banquet to its climax. Uncle Bruce, it has been a few years since we last met. Please forgive me for taking the liberty to visit. Haha, Your Royal Highness is too polite. Your visit is an honor for Rose. Thank you for your hospitality. I, Nuwa Iyer Heathcrete, on behalf of the theocracy, offer my blessings to the people of Rose who have won their freedom. I hope the friendship between our two countries can last forever. At the front of the banquet hall, the blonde Nuwa Iyer was greeting Bruce. A few minutes ago, the sudden arrival of Her Royal Highness caused a huge commotion. Xia Luo and Ai Lizzie, who were fighting, could not help but stop. The two girls were surprised by the Nuwa Iyer's arrival. However, in the banquet hall, the two sides did not choose to fight directly. Instead, they went through the formalities. After landing, Nuwa Iyer immediately announced her identity and greeted the host, Bruce, fully showing her respect for Rose. After that, she gave an opening speech to all the guests and lifted her skirt, which made the people of Rose even more excited. The princess of the theocracy of Saint Maester was of noble status. Usually she lived in seclusion and rarely went out. The number of times she went abroad could be counted with one's fingers. The arrival of such a person naturally brought about a celebrity effect. In the midst of the commotion, the blonde princess finally had time to meet her nemesis. On both sides of the platform, The graceful angel and the noble elf looked at each other from afar. Their gazes collided across space, and the magic power in the air fluctuated faintly. Source level 4. This was the strength of the two girls, and at the same time, it also represented their top talents. After the initial observation and testing, Nuair found that it was difficult to determine the strength of both sides. She could not use her aura to suppress the other party, so she changed her strategy. She curled the corner of her mouth and turned to the other main character in the banquet hall. Uncle Kadia, you arrived first. How was your journey? Thank you for your concern, Your Royal Highness. My body was fine even when I was on the front line. Naturally, I don't need to worry about it in the rear. That's good. Luoya is not here, so I have to take care of Uncle. Otherwise, my father will scold me. Haha, Prince Kai-en is making a mountain out of a molehill. In the music, Xiaoluo looked at the girl who was chatting happily with Kadia in the distance. Her face suddenly turned pale. Her hand that was holding the wine glass tightened slightly. She felt as if something was falling from her heart. Chapter 199. Was Luoya injured? This was undoubtedly the most important question. The answer might even have the ability to influence the current situation. But at the same time, this was also an Achilles heel that Xiaoluo couldn't answer. In fact, Luoya's current situation couldn't be described as injured. He could basically be considered old, weak, sick, and disabled. This was also the reason why Xiaoluo's current situation was so unfavorable. Originally, Miss Luoya's plan was to treat Luoya's illness after Luoya's treatment. When the two families came chasing after them, the two of them would come out together. With Bruce's Taiji fist, they could basically turn big problems into small ones and small ones into nothing. However, no one expected that Luoya's illness would be so difficult to deal with. Even a renowned master like Andrew was helpless. But strangely enough, ever since he heard the cure from Andrew, Luoya, as the patient, was no longer anxious. These days he drank tea, strolled around, and enjoyed the scenery with Xiaoluo. He even comforted Xiaoluo, saying that he had found a cure. Miss Luoya's worried fiancé was very touched by Luoya's words, but she also knew that it was impossible. The tree of life was gone, so where could Luoya find a cure? As for the special bloodline that had almost unlimited vitality, Luoya was always together with Xiaoluo. The young lady had never seen him take the initiative to contact anyone. Could it be that this bloodline that was 1 in a million could come to him on its own accord? My dear, you must be afraid that I'll be worried. Miss Luoya interpreted Luoya's words as a white lie. Thinking of this, she was even more touched. These days, she was even more gentle to the young man. At the same time, she started a large-scale bounty for items related to the Tree of Life. But so far, there was no news. Luoya's injury has healed, but the curse's side effects are still ongoing. Xiaoluo pondered for a long time before revealing the truth. Nuair raised her eyebrows and instinctively attributed the side effects to Gulandair. Her Royal Highness thought so and put the blame on the huge skeleton that was still in a state of autism. On the other side, Ai Lizzie heard Xiaoluo's words and heaved a sigh of relief. Thus, after confirming that Luoya was fine, the battle resumed. Miss Xiaoluo, what you were discussing before. You seem to think that your relationship with Luoya is deep? It's not seem, it's the truth. Oh, if that's the case, then why did you kidnap me to come here? With such a deep relationship, is Luoya unwilling to come to Miss Xiaoluo's hometown? That's naturally because of certain people's obstruction. My dear was worried that our relationship would be misunderstood by others, so he allowed me to return to Rouse to protect me. The reddish-brown-haired girl stared at Nuair and lied without blushing. Then, her lips curled into a mocking smile. The most fortunate thing for me recently was that I had a misunderstanding with my dear when we first met under the influence of certain people. As a result, I performed 3 fate divinations to stabilize our relationship. From this point of view, we were blessed by fate and can be said to be a match made in heaven. Miss Xiaoluo, you seem to be suffering from paranoia. Also, when you speak of fate with Lord Elder Brother, are you referring to an employment contract with real money and a clear price tag? AI Lizzie exposed Miss Xia Luo's true identity. Nua Ayer's eyes flashed with a cold glint. She didn't continue arguing with the girl, but calmly made an announcement. Xia Luo, that's enough. I understand your excuse, but unfortunately, I won't be deceived by your flowery words. I will bring Luoya back. You two are a match made in heaven? Luoya and I have known each other since we were 9 years old. Our story has been circulating in the holy capital since a few years ago. I'm afraid you haven't even heard of his name when we were together in life and death. He is mine. He has always been mine. He is now, and he will be mine in the future. Charlotte's tone was like a fuse that ignited the anger in Noelle's heart that had been suppressed for a long time. It was on the verge of exploding. Charlotte's tone was like a calm fuse that ignited the anger in Noelle's heart. Then what if I don't give it to you? Facing the angel's declaration, the red-haired girl replied. She took a step forward, and a spell began to secretly rise. In the past, Xia Luo might not have been Nua Ayer's match. However, in the journey of the historical fragment, Miss Xia Luo had gained more than Luoya. She had already broken through the limit of Source Level 5 and advanced to Source Level 4. Now that she had inherited her ancestors' legacy, she wouldn't allow herself to be inferior to her love rival. Moreover, another discovery made the girl's gaze sharpen. Miss Nua Ayer, has no one ever told you that you're strange? What? From your tone, you seem to treat Luoya as your possession. I can't ignore that. Xia Luo narrowed her eyes and stared into Nua Ayer's azure eyes. She calmly spoke. Although it's fine as a ruler, in terms of love, Miss Nua Ayer wouldn't be a tyrant, right? Chapter 200. Luoya Akit had a nightmare. The world in the dream was chaotic and dark, like a vast sea without a sun. Luoya walked on this sea, his heart full of helplessness and confusion. Unlike when he went to see Gulandair and Paitila, in this dream, Luoya's self-awareness was clearer, and there was no delayed numbness. However, this did not mean that he had a good experience this time. In fact, it was even worse. The ancient god's guidance blurred his consciousness. In some ways, this was actually a kind of protection for him. The pilgrimage consumed a lot of mental energy, and if it was not blurred, Luoya would have been exhausted when he saw Gulandair and the others. Standing in the darkness, Luoya's mind began to work slowly. He did not know what was going on, but he vaguely felt that there was a familiar aura here. It was under his feet. In the deep sea, there was a bone-chilling aura of frozen earth. That aura seemed to be active, calling for Luoya to come closer. After thinking for a while, the black-haired youth looked around and dived to the bottom of the sea without finding anything. There was no suffocating feeling in the dark bottom of the sea. A faint light appeared in Luoya's eyes. It was a blue dot in the bottom of the sea, a frost that was emitting light. As Luoya approached, the light began to move. It jumped, as if it was attracted, and floated into Luoya's embrace. It was a joy like a swallow returning to its nest. Even without any communication, Luoya could feel it. After the frost entered his body, Luoya, who was floating in the water, began to emit an icy blue light that illuminated the surroundings. He knew by reflex that he was about to leave. However, in this moment of joy and harmony, an unimaginable pressure suddenly descended on the young man. His body seemed to be penetrated by something, and a sense of danger exploded in his heart. The young man abruptly turned around and looked into the distance. In the next moment, his body seemed to have been struck by lightning. What appeared there was a pair of eyes that flashed for a moment before disappearing. Ah, dear. In the bedroom of the 100-bird garden, Luoya, who was sleeping soundly, screamed and suddenly got up. He gasped for breath, and a layer of sweat appeared on his forehead and back. This appearance of waking up from a nightmare frightened the girl in pajamas beside him. Xia Luo sat up and looked at the youth who was widening his eyes and reaching out to touch his body. Her eyes softened, and at the same time, she breathed a sigh of relief. She climbed a step forward on the bed, straightened her body, and reached out to hug the youth's neck. She softly comforted him. Dear, did you have a nightmare? Phew, it seems. It's okay, it's okay. Yeah. Feeling the temperature of the red-haired girl, Roha glanced around and his breathing gradually calmed down. Charlotte looked at the boy and her desire to protect him increased. She couldn't help but hold him tighter. After a while, the girl spoke to divert Roja's attention. I'm really surprised. I thought you would never have such an expression. Ha! What expression? The expression of fear. After all, no matter what happened before, you've never been afraid. I didn't expect to see this side of you because of a nightmare. Everyone is afraid of nightmares. The black-haired youth retorted in the girl's arms. Xia Luo's smile deepened. She reached out to stroke the youth's hair and murmured. The last time I felt you were afraid was in the cabin of the golden battleship. That monster almost killed me. You were afraid then, right? Yeah. Feeling the affection of the girl beside him, the black-haired youth hesitated for a moment and nodded. I almost didn't make it. I was really scared. Do you care about me that much? Luoya blushed and turned his head away silently. Xia Luo cheered in her heart. So cute. I promise Sister Isha Bela to protect you. Besides, if anything happens to you, the Akat family will be in big trouble. Is that so? If that's the case, why did you rush out? Weren't you angry because he wanted to kill me? I was trying to prevent future trouble. Chapter 201. The next morning, the city gate of Rosetta was bustling with activity. At dawn, the delegation from St. Maester officially arrived in Rosetta, along with the long-detained gemstone necklace caravan. Gulacy and the others stayed in Akat for a week. During this week, other than not being able to leave without permission, there were no special restrictions. When the Akat family set off, they didn't bring them along because the caravan was too long, so they could only follow the Nua Ayers team back after Liberation Day. Missing the festival wasn't a big deal. After all, it was Rosetta's new year. But this time, following the Nua Ayers team back, Gulacy, who had collected a lot of information, was anxious. That's right, Gulacy was anxious because she heard something. If it was true, then her miss would be in a serious situation. When can I return to my post? Have we already entered the city? The maid who was detained in the carriage angrily complained to the soldiers, but the soldiers strictly forbade everyone from leaving the carriage. Gulacy looked at Bishop Philip, who was chatting in front of her, and sighing at the unique scenery of Rosetta. In the end, she didn't choose to force her way in. Miss. Gulacy looked into the distance and muttered to herself. At this time, in the city hall, the elegantly dressed Xia Luo was receiving Nua Ayer, who came to inquire, as well as the many legal personnel of the Holy See behind her. After entering the city today, the investigation and inquiry team of St. Maester, who was tasked with the mission of Akat Domain's proxy lord kidnapping case, set off together. Under the leadership of Nua Ayer, they aggressively came to the city hall to summon Xia Luo. Luoya temporarily stayed in the 100 Birds Hall due to physical inconvenience, and the Holy See personnel took the initiative to visit and collect evidence. Xia Luo was already prepared for the princess's fist technique. Behind him, the legal team of the Luo Seti government was on standby. The confrontation between the two sides was white-hot. According to Article 4 of the National Security Law of the Theocracy of St. Maester, when a local lord is kidnapped, resulting in the restriction of his freedom, the theocracy and the Highskrit royal family must take action and use all possible means to arrest, punish, and escort the criminal to the capital of the theocracy for trial. Now we suspect that Miss Xia Luo Sorofia of the United Nations is suspected of violating this safety law and has been charged with several charges. In the case of factual evidence, we have the right to forcibly arrest her. The white-haired old judge of the theocracy opened with an intimidating and threatening speech. His temperament and confidence in upholding justice for many years made him high-spirited. Even if everyone present knew that forcible arrest was nonsense, they still couldn't help but be shocked by the toughness in his words. However, as the saying goes, the east wind can't suppress the west wind. The theocracy's attitude was tough, but Luo Seti's attitude wasn't weak either. Under the gaze of the judge, an old man with a white beard stood up shakily. It was the former head of the Luo Seti legal department. The old man took a deep breath and stood up straight. He didn't back down and refuted. According to the special clause in the White Paper on Strategic Cooperation between the Rose Business United Nations and the Akhat Territory, when the children of one party encounter danger or suffer serious injuries during war, the other party has the responsibility and obligation to provide them with a safe environment and complete treatment. Now that the eastern region is at war, Marquis Qadia of Akhat Territory is one of the participants, which means that Akhat Territory is in an abnormal state of war. In this state, Ms. Xia Luot Sarofia of the United Nations determined that Akhat Territory couldn't provide complete treatment when Marquis Qadia is not present. It is reasonable, and legal to bring him to Luo Seti for treatment. As for the crime and kidnapping, it is a misunderstanding caused by poor communication between the two sides. Please be careful with your words. The two old men, whose combined age was more than 200 years old, glared at each other across the table. Their 4 eyes were like light bulbs, and after the one who took the lead rushed forward, the support personnel and assistants at the back also began to do their best. The so-called White Paper on Strategic Cooperation between the Rose Commercial United Nations and the Akhat Territory is just a private agreement signed between the local feudal lord and a foreign country. It has no legal effect on the Saint Maester theocracy. The national security law is much higher than it. According to the Third Agreement of Human Countries, the local law is the priority to adjudicate the private disputes between the local lords. The strategic agreements between the territories have discretion. The Luoya Akhat incident this time is an international incident that affects the stability of the theocracy of Saint Maester and the authority of Nua Iyer Princess Heidikrit. It cannot be defined as a private matter between the lords. Please do not mislead the public. A fierce confrontation took place in the legal office. The two sides involved were the top legal talents of the two countries. For a time, the laws were flying everywhere. Books after books were flipped. The laws of the theocracy of Saint Maester, the laws of Akhat Territory, the laws of the United Nations of Saint Maester, and even the Strategic Alliance and the Human Common Agreement were used as cannonballs. The Chief Justice of the theocracy, Koster, and the former legal officer of the United Nations of Saint Maester, Karu, were arguing tit for tat. They refuted each other and gradually became angry. One was gnashing his teeth, while the other was glaring. In a situation where they were evenly matched, the two sides were no longer just trying to get a man for their little mistress. This battle gradually evolved into a direct confrontation between the legal system of the theocracy of Saint Maester and the legal system of the United Nations of Saint Maester and the legal system of the United Nations of Saint Maester. If they lost, not only would Xia Luot and Nua Iyer be dissatisfied, they would also be unable to raise their heads in front of the other side in the future. For 3 hours, neither side had the upper hand in the war of words. Although the investigation team of the Nua Iyer was attacking, whether it was the crime of Xia Luot or the possible violation of the law, they could not be established under the cover of the United Nations of Saint Maester. The reddish-brown-haired girl took a sip of tea. She was not surprised by this result. In fact, she had put in a lot of effort for this day. Everyone on the United Nations of Saint Maester was an experienced defense expert. The former legal officer, Karu, was personally invited by Bruce. How could they lose? The condition for the establishment of a restriction of personal freedom is that the person being restricted has the will to move freely. During the journey of Miss Xia Luot and young Master Luoyo Akhat, we have strictly consulted their will. We even carried out activities such as stargazing and other entertainment activities. There is no doubt that this does not meet the definition of a kidnapping. After another round of debate, the theocracy of Saint Maester still did not make any progress. Chief Justice Koster turned his head to look at the princess sitting behind him. His eyes moved slightly as he nodded. I see. Then we will temporarily put aside the criminal complaint of Xia Luot. Next, we will inquire about the marriage between Xia Luot and Luoyo Akhat. As soon as the Chief Justice said this, the hall fell into silence. The legal personnel on the United Nations of Saint Maester's side looked at each other and gradually relaxed. There was no other reason other than the fact that although marriage contracts were formulated based on the marriage laws of various countries, they were basically at the edge of the law. Generally speaking, there wouldn't be any problems. Under the circumstances where Charlotte wasn't convicted, it was almost impossible to overturn it. If asked, it would be resolute in fulfilling it. The most difficult moment had passed. It seemed that the United Nations of St. Maester needed to rest and adjust. With this thought in mind, the legal personnel who had been fighting for a few hours heaved a sigh of relief. It was almost noon. After working for so long, some of them were already thinking about lunch. In the midst of this silence, Chief Justice Coster asked in a clear voice. Chapter 202. Luoya was a little worried when he heard that Ai Lizzie had taken on the task of curing the life exhaustion. After all, in his heart, Ai Lizzie was still a girl who needed protection. She had never shown her extraordinary power in front of Luoya. Oh no, she had shown it before. Occasionally, the girl would lean on him and do maintenance on the ancient books when he was reading. This was probably the time when Ai Lizzie showed her curse to Luoya the most. But the problem was that this curse could be used as low as source rank 6, so he couldn't see its level at all. Because of this, Luoya didn't leave everything to Ai Lizzie. Instead, he called Old Man Andrew and asked him to see if Ai Lizzie's bloodline talisman met the requirements. When the white-haired Old Man Andrew walked through the door and looked at Ai Lizzie beside the boy, Luoya's heart couldn't help but jump. But in the next moment, Andrew's old eyes widened. What's going on? Can it really be found? Is this possible? The old man who had lived for more than 100 years and had never seen such a special bloodline used a curse to stare at Ai Lizzie carefully. He found that the life energy in the girl's body was far beyond that of an ordinary person. Seeing this, Andrew breathed a sigh of relief and had an expression of gratitude. Luoya could be saved. Not only was Luoya happy, but the experts who had been thinking about how to save him were also happy. One must know that the Akot family had already arrived in Rosetta City. Andrew and the others were under a lot of pressure. They scratched their ears and cheeks every day, trying to figure out how to cure him. But unfortunately, going bald couldn't solve the problem. It could only reflect the light in front of the problem. When Old Man Andrew was young, he didn't work, so his white hair was still elegant and thick. But his beard couldn't stand it anymore. Every day, when he thought about problems, he would stroke his beard. Whenever there was a problem, he would use force. In the past 2 days, he had pulled out more than 20 hairs. So when he saw Ai Lizzie, he was as excited as seeing a relative. Child, your situation should meet the standard. Don't be nervous. Can you materialize your life force? At this moment, Luoya, who was beside Ai Lizzie, suddenly felt refreshed and excited for no reason. In his perception, Ai Lizzie was like a silver moon. Boundless vitality overflowed around her, making Luoya feel as if he was immersed in a cold spring. He felt refreshed. At the same time, the silver-haired girl opened her eyes in a timely manner. She gently raised her hand, and a little bird formed from white energy appeared out of thin air, standing on her palm and looking around. Andrew's dim old eyes widened at the sight, and he almost jumped up and cheered. This is too shocking. I didn't think that life energy could be refined to such a degree. The old man took a few steps forward, took out a magnifying glass from his pocket, and observed the little bird in Ai Lizzie's hand. It was obvious that he had never seen such a scene before. The silver-haired girl, who had proven her ability to treat Luoya, smiled when she saw this. The black-haired boy also heaved a sigh of relief. Incredible! Is this the special bloodline of the life type recorded in the book? It feels more exaggerated than the records. Andrew said to himself excitedly, but Luoya smiled bitterly at the side. The old man probably didn't know that Ai Lizzie's real bloodline ability was at night. It was now daytime. Strictly speaking, it was the time when her bloodline ability was the weakest. Grandpa Andrew, look at Ai Lizzie's situation. It's enough, it's completely enough. What's the specific treatment method? Is it to use any curse vessel? No, life energy is not curse power. The curse vessel is difficult to bear. The specific treatment method is formulated according to the strength of the bloodline. Andrew put down the magnifying glass and carefully explained to Luoya, the patient. According to the ancient records, the dew of the tree of life was also divided into grades. The high-grade dew could be applied externally, And it didn't even need to be drunk. The low-grade do not only needed to be drunk, but also needed to find several medicines to enhance the effect. However, as the saying goes, every medicine has its own side effect. No matter how the treatment was done, there would be side effects if the dosage was wrong. And what are the side effects if the dosage is too high? About this, Andrew, who was asked this question, looked a little hesitant. He glanced at AI Lizzie, who was also looking at him curiously. After struggling for a long time, he felt that he should explain it clearly. Life energy is the basic power of creatures. There is not much side effect if there is too much. It's just energetic, especially energetic. Does it mean that you can't sleep at night? Luoya asked tentatively. Andrew was embarrassed when he heard the words. It's true that you can't sleep, but it's not that kind of insomnia. Too much life energy, will greatly stimulate the reproductive function and desire of creatures. In fact, the density of animals near the tree of life is very high, and they will consciously act as the guardians of the tree of life. It should be the reason why it is conducive to the reproduction of creatures. As for the treatment of the special bloodline, the principle should be similar. The old man's voice echoed in the room. Luoya couldn't help but feel embarrassed when he heard this explanation. On the other side, the silver-haired girl suddenly widened her eyes. Her crimson pupils emitted light, and she looked at the young man on the side deeply. Then she immediately lowered her head to cover it up, and her eyes flickered. This, Master Andrew, as long as it's not too much, it should be fine, right? Indeed, what I said should be the case of excess. As long as you control it carefully, it should not be so serious. How should I do it specifically? It's not written in this record, but it doesn't matter. We can try it. There are only a few methods. Chapter 203. Xia Luo Tsarophia had never thought that she would one day encounter such a huge problem. According to the marriage law of the Russian Merchant Union, there is indeed no problem with the two parties entering into a marriage contract. However, according to the marriage law of the Saint Mestre theocracy, the longest marriage contract signed by the nobles of the theocracy is 150 years, and it must be within 3 generations. In the legal office, the theocracy's chief judge Koster calmly read out this law, causing all the members of the Russian Merchant Union to widen their eyes. At the back, the reddish-brown girl's face stiffened, and she almost couldn't believe her ears. As of now, Xia Luo and Luoya's marriage contract had only been signed for a little over 100 years, and it was still far from the 150 years limit. However, that wasn't the main point. It was the so-called within 3 generations. Back then, Lord Branakot of Akkot, who was also Luoya's grandfather, was only in his 20s when he helped the Russian Merchant Union to establish the kingdom. At that time, the head of the Tsarophia family, Dindit Tsarophia, was almost 60 years old, more than 30 years older than Bran. Although in this world, extraordinaries in their 50s were considered to be in their prime, it was obvious that they weren't from the same generation. When the marriage contract was signed, Dindit's daughter was already in her 40s, and was already married. Naturally, he didn't want to marry off his daughter, but rather his granddaughter. However, Bran was already married at that time, so the marriage contract was postponed. However, when the marriage contract was extended to 100 years later, there was a huge problem. Luoyo Akkot, as Bran's grandson, was the 3rd generation and was within the marriage contract's validity. However, Xia Luo Tsarophia was Dindit's great-granddaughter, so she was the 4th generation. In other words, the marriage contract was invalid in Xia Luo's generation. When the theocracy mentioned this fact, all the members of the Russian Merchant Union were stunned. The next moment, a loud bang came from Xia Luo. What a joke! The reddish-brown-haired girl slammed the solid wooden table in front of her into pieces in a fit of anger. She stood up and glared at Noelle. However, the blonde girl was quite calm in the face of Charlotte's fierce attack. She took a sip of tea and looked at Charlotte and asked calmly, "What's the matter?" "What? Miss Xia Luo, do you have any questions?" "Of course. Do you think I haven't read the laws of the theocracy before? There's no additional clause at all." "Hihi, are you finally beginning to lose your mind?" Have you read the original case of the marriage law of the Church of Saint Maester? If you haven't seen it, please speak carefully. We will record any slander you make. Also, Miss Xia Luot, you seem to have misunderstood me. I didn't deny the marriage contract between the Akkad family and the Sorofia family. I only denied you. The golden-haired angel recalled Charlot's words last night, and he happily retaliated with a smile on his face. The marriage contract between Akkad and Sorofia is a century-old one. It has deep historical significance. Why would I break such a contract? I just want it to be carried out according to the agreement. But Xia Luot, you can't do it, but your aunts can. You. Young miss, please calm down. Facing Xia Luot, who was completely enraged by the Nua ire, the former legal officer of the Russian Merchant Union, Karu, hurriedly gestured to stop her. The experienced old man narrowed his eyes. He knew that anger was useless now. It was time to show his skills. Judge Coster, may I ask what year the 43rd Amendment to the marriage law of the Church of Saint Maester was passed? Was the original case brought? As far as I know, at least in the laws issued by the Russian Merchant Union, there is no such article. The amendment to the law was made 120 years ago in the autumn of the Third Era, in the year 890. At that time, there were many cases of marriage contract fraud. In order to stabilize the order among the nobles, the judicial system of the Church of Saint Maester made amendments to the marriage law. 4 articles were added to it. This is one of them. Judge Coster confidently brought up these old matters to increase the credibility of the Church of Saint Maester. However, Karu didn't buy it. The old man with the white beard waved his hand and angrily rebuked the judge. Ridiculous. Judge Coster, this is the sacred legal hall. Please be careful with your words. The amendment to the Church of Saint Maester was made 120 years ago? Then why hasn't this section been published in the Church of Saint Maester's legal code? That's because the Church of Saint Maester's legal code is for all citizens. The amendment to the marriage law of the Church of Saint Maester was set up separately for the nobles. It has never been printed on a large scale. However, there have been dozens of cases decided based on the amendment in the past century. This is an undeniable fact. I see. Then I will admit the existence of the amendment to the 43rd Amendment to the marriage law of the Church of Saint Maester. However, I would like to question the time and jurisdiction of the amendment. In my opinion, although the amendment was made early, it was published later than the time when the marriage contract between Akkad and Sorofia was signed. On the other hand, the marriage contract between us and Akkad was signed in the territory of Saint Maester, not the Church of Saint Maester. Therefore, the amendment to the Church of Saint Maester should not involve the Sorofia family. The former head of the legal department, Karu, had dragged the entire conference into a quagmire. At this point, both sides were completely at loggerheads, and all kinds of dirty tricks were used. Judge Coster was disgusted by Loche's close combat. He desperately emphasized the reliability and authenticity of the Church of Saint Maester's law, but Karu turned a blind eye to it. He only insisted on 2 points. One was the confirmation letter from the Akkad family regarding the amendment to the law, and the other was the scope of application of the Church of Saint Maester's supplementary clause. A fierce battle unfolded in the legal hall. The scene was fierce beyond imagination. However, at the back, the red-haired girl's heart was cold. In any case, her marriage contract with Luoya had become a major point of dispute. Before the two sides reached a conclusion, it was basically invalid. Although Xia Luo could rely on a strong legal team to not completely lose the marriage contract, she could no longer enforce it under reasonable circumstances. Xia Luo's strongest weapon was useless. The battle in the legal hall of Saint Maester was fierce. On the other side, in the Sorofia manor, Ai Lizi's heart was also burning. Not long ago, when Andrew said that he could use the life energy of realization to heal, Luoya could be said to be relieved. After all, the bird in Ai Lizi's palm was so vivid. When it first appeared, it even made Luoya's body faintly resonate with it. At first glance, it was obvious that the effect was significant. If this bird went down, even if it didn't cure the disease, at least it wouldn't be far from recovery, right? The black-haired boy smiled as he thought so. Then he saw the cute bird that he had high hopes for fall in front of his eyes. Chapter 204. In the council hall, the confrontation between Xia Luot Sorofia and Nua Iyer Heathcrete had entered the intermission. Due to the intense confrontation in the second half of the morning, the tension between the legal team and the Inquisition team was very strong. Therefore, the plan to have lunch together was temporarily cancelled. However, as VIPs, Nua Iyer and Xia Luot's lunch couldn't be cancelled. No matter how fierce the fight was in the legal office, the nobles had to abide by the etiquette, especially when it came to a state guest like Noel, who came to congratulate them. They had to be courteous to send them off. Therefore this noon, Xia Luot must hold her nose and sit with Nua Iyer, even if she couldn't wait for the woman opposite her to disappear immediately. The same situation applied to Nua Iyer. Miss Angel also had to be polite and respectful, even if she wanted to beat Xia Luot up. The two young ladies with fake smiles on their faces began their lunch. From a certain point of view, this lunch could be considered peaceful. After all, both sides were very restrained. However, there was no lack of soft knives and verbal sparring. Miss Nua Iyer, what do you think of this wine? It's okay, but the sweetness is too strong. As expected, the taste of the Rose region doesn't suit me. It's just like the owner of this wine. This wine is called Pamela wine. It's a specialty from the southern mountains of Akkot. Xia Luot added with a smile. As soon as the words left her mouth, the blonde girl's body stiffened. After a moment of silence, Miss Angel picked up the wine glass and took another sip. If you taste it carefully, it's not bad. Although Akkot is close to the Rose region, the taste isn't that extreme. It's just like its owner. In the face of the princess' 180-degree change in expression, and the classic double standards, Charlotte was speechless. She thought for a while before readjusting her state of mind. She looked at the wine glass and said faintly, "This is a good wine that I tasted with my dear on my way back. It's very suitable for the taste of the Rose people. It's as sweet as our fateful love. I've decided to make it one of our business partners and promote it as a new summer product in various countries." Ha! Miss Xia Luot, what are you talking about? Are you talking in your sleep? I'm not used to it. Facing Xia Luot's public display of affection, Nua Iyer raised her eyebrows and sneered. No way, Miss Xia Luot. You don't think that it's yours just because you found it, right? Let me tell you a fact. Akkot's first business partner is Heathcliff, and it will always be Heathcliff. Our two families have signed countless contracts. As a specialty wine produced in Akkot, and produced in the Saint Maester theocracy, it can only represent the common fruit of our two families. There's no need to trouble Sorofia Chamber of Commerce with the promotion. Just leave it to the Vatican. After all, this is also a specialty of the Saint Maester theocracy. Your Highness Nua Iyer, you don't seem to understand the principle of business priority, but you still understand the principle of first come first serve, right? I think you need to respect this principle of fairness based on time, especially for contracts that are 100 years in advance. Miss Xia Luot, I think I've made it clear enough. I acknowledge the marriage contract signed in Akkot. It's just that the scope of the marriage contract does not include you. Please don't use your identity as Luo Ye's fiancé to flatter yourself. On the dining table, there was a crisp sound of a knife hitting the bottom of the table. Charlotte, who had been poked in her sore spot, was furious. However, she was forcefully suppressing her anger. On the other hand, Miss Angel, who was sitting opposite her, appeared calm and composed. By the way, Miss Nua Iyer, do you know? Honey, you like to hug something when you're sleeping. Xia Luot, who thought of something, suddenly narrowed her eyes and explained to Nua Iyer with a smile. Her bright smile was even colder than the cold light of a sword. It should be because she subconsciously lacks a sense of security. After all, my dear seems to have a lot on her mind. Every time she hugs me, I feel very warm, so warm that I hesitate to continue sleeping. However, I don't think Miss Nua Iyer has experienced this before. I'm sorry, I said something you don't understand. Xia Luot. The golden-haired girl gritted her teeth as the young miss showed off. She took a few deep breaths to calm her emotions, and also revealed a smile on her face. By the way, I remember that year in the holy capital, Luoya and I formed a guardian relationship with Uncle Kadia and grandfather in front of thousands of people. Since ancient times, the approval of one's family has been an important factor in love. Speaking of which, Miss Luot, your relationship seems to have never received the blessings of your elders. This is really regrettable. Nua Ayer's words made the brown-haired girl's expression turn ugly. After a round of insulting each other, the two of them glared at each other and were so angry that they couldn't eat. In this silence, Xia Luot's maid suddenly stepped forward and leaned over to whisper in her ear. It was news from Andrew. After giving guidance to Ai Lizi and Luoya, Grandpa naturally wanted to inform Xia Luot of the good news of Luoya's recovery. After all, Luoya's recovery would give Luo Chet more confidence in the negotiations. Ai Lizi is actually a life force type bloodline possessor? When Xia Luot heard this news, she couldn't help but be surprised. She finally understood why Luoya was so calm for so long. I see. I didn't expect it to be Ai Lizi. By the way, how are they going to treat her? Grandpa Andrew said it's a body fluid therapy. Chapter 205. Do you want to keep Ai Lizi by your side forever? Luoya could answer this question without hesitation. Yes, he really wanted to, but he couldn't say it. No matter what, Luoya was Ai Lizi's older brother. In his position, he shouldn't restrict Ai Lizi's development, but encourage her to explore more. After all, the world was huge, and there were many wonderful things waiting for others to discover. But people were selfish, and Luoya was no different. The desire to keep Ai Lizi by his side every day did exist, and when Ai Lizi asked him to choose, he couldn't control his thoughts, especially after Ai Lizi's series of ambushes made him dizzy. Looking at the girl who was looking at him affectionately, Luoya knew that it was probably because of her recent experience of being kidnapped, or Xia Luot's words that provoked Ai Lizi, causing her to go berserk. But looking at the girl's tender red eyes, Luoya couldn't refuse her no matter what. Ai Lizi's beauty was soul-stirring. Although Luoya could get used to this soul-stirring, when she revealed an expression that was different from before, his defenses would be easily broken through. Yes. After hesitating for a long time, the black-haired boy still said something that he shouldn't have said. After hearing Luoya's answer, Ai Lizi was so excited that her body trembled. She hugged her lover in front of her with so much force that Luoya felt a little pain, but it also made him slightly sober. I understand, big brother, as well. You want to be with Ai Lizi forever. The silver-haired girl said this in Luoya's ear. Her emotions were about to go out of control, but Luoya, who had slightly regained his senses, pressed down on her shoulder and forcefully pinched between his eyebrows to bring the topic back to the topic at hand. What else? Big brother, do you want to make me cry? Or do you want me to bleed and get hurt? No, that's not what I meant. After hearing Ai Lizi's words, Luoya stuttered and didn't know how to explain, but the silver-haired girl spoke righteously. Old Mr. Andrew said that I have to control my intake a little and not overdo it. If it's tears, I'll have to cry a few times. If there's too much life energy in the blood, it's hard to control. In the end, isn't saliva the most convenient? After listening to Elisa's explanation, Roha carefully thought about it. He found that saliva was indeed easy to secrete and easy to control. The dose of life energy was also small. From the functional point of view, it was almost perfect. Okay, it's like that, but Luoya's face was red, but he didn't say anything for a long time. He said it was ambiguous, but the kiss had already broken through the boundary of ambiguity. He said it was too intimate, but it also felt a little cold towards Ai Lizi. He said it wasn't ethical, but Ai Lizi wasn't related to him by blood. Although Ai Lizi was spoiled by Luoya like a little princess in the Akat family, and Kadia was very satisfied with her. In fact, Ai Lizi had the right to leave the Akat family at any time after she reached adulthood. In the beginning, Kadia adopted Ai Lizi to take care of her until she reached adulthood, and marry into a good family to comfort his comrade's soul in heaven. However, the series of changes that happened later made the Marquis want to digest her internally. Of course, It wasn't certain whether it was Luoya digesting AI Lizzie or AI Lizzie digesting Luoya. Elder brother, it seems that you still don't have a clear understanding of your situation. Seeing that Luoya's resistance had reached the final passive resistance and was about to be broken through, AI Lizzie was very excited, but her face was calm and serious. She seriously looked at Luoya's golden eyes, her eyes full of concern. Your current situation has already reached such a serious point. Do you still want to hold on to those meaningless feelings of shame? It's just a kiss compared to your body, which is more important, elder brother, don't you know? Under the attack of AI Lizzie as a medical personnel, the patient Luoya was speechless for a moment. The young boy carefully thought along the girl's line of thought, and realized that as a girl, AI Lizzie wasn't shy. As a man, he really shouldn't be shy. So that's how it is, I understand. Luoya nodded as if accepting his fate, and AI Lizzie, who had successfully fooled her elder brother, also smiled. She raised her hand and poured a glass of wine, downing it in one gulp, and fed Luoya again in the same way. However, behind Luoya's back, AI Lizzie's hand flashed with a pale white light. Pamela wine was mainly sweet, and due to the brewing process of this world, the alcohol content of the wine itself wasn't high. However, after drinking several glasses of wine with life energy, Luoya still felt a little strange. Very head, it's not the kind of head that bubbles come from the stomach, but the feeling of heat rushing through the body. The other feeling is the brain. He doesn't know if it's because of the wine and the energy complementing each other, but Roja vaguely felt a little bit. AI Lizzie, stop, I'm a little dizzy and I don't know why, but I feel very hot. Realizing that the situation was getting worse, Luoya hurriedly called for a stop. Hearing this, the silver-haired girl raised her body meekly and hugged Luoya, but the hand behind his back increased the output of life energy in one go. Wine, ambiguous intimacy, excessive life energy. All the factors had come together one by one under AI Lizzie's plan. And under the effect of this combination, Luoya's breathing began to become heavier and heavier, and the various side effects began to become more and more obvious. Wait. What's going on? Why is blood congested? It's just a few mouthfuls of wine no matter what, isn't this too much? Luoya, who noticed the reaction, panicked. He widened his eyes and his face flushed red, trying to hide it, but what he didn't know was that AI Lizzie wasn't a pure little white rabbit, but a big bad wolf that had set its sights on its prey. How could she let go of this opportunity? Big brother, what's wrong? Realizing that it was already the final moment, the girl with a smile on her face pretended not to notice and asked. Then, she looked down and slightly widened her eyes. After hesitating for a while, the girl bent down and whispered in Luoya's ear with a seductive fragrance. Chapter 206. When the blonde angel rushed into the door, she saw AI Lizzie's body sticking to Luoya's body. When she saw that she was about to finish the last step and eat the dessert, she was a little upset and angry. I'm fighting with Xia Luod in the front, and you're painting green paint on my crown? AI Lizzie, don't you dare. The moment she shouted this sentence, the light wings behind Nua Ire were already shining brightly. Her Royal Highness Princess chose to attack directly in anger. The bright light turned into a dozen golden chains, shooting at the silver-haired girl like arrows. At the same time, Xia Luod also attacked. A crisp sound sounded on Luoya's body. It was the sound of the glass bottle breaking. It was also the sound of Xia Luod's main battle curse vessel coming out of the cage. The golden soul, which stabilized Luoya's injury, responded to the master's curse power at this moment and bloomed with light. In an instant, the golden liquid expanded rapidly in the air, turning into a ball that wrapped Luoya, physically isolating AI Lizzie outside. On the other side, the reddish-brown-haired girl had reached out and stroked the ring. Gem trigger. A voice with anger sounded. The gorgeous trigger curse vessel reappeared in Xia Luod's hand after many days. The anger in the girl's heart now was no less than that of Nua Ire. If Her Royal Highness Princess was angry because of being betrayed by her ally, then Xia Luod was angry because of this place. This was 100 Birds Hall, Xia Luod's home. Being cuckolded at home, no woman could bear this kind of treatment, let alone a noble lady. Bang! Along with the sound of the trigger being pulled, the gemstone shattered into bits of light powder. An ice-cold and slow curse suddenly appeared out of nowhere and rapidly spread in Elisa's blood. The sudden arrival of the curse made Elisa's body feel as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Behind her, the golden chains had already rushed forward. Under the preemptive attack of Nua Iyer and Xia Luot, AI Lizzie could be said to be in a crisis. However, no matter how angry they were, they didn't let it get to their heads. They both understood that AI Lizzie couldn't really be hurt, at least not in front of Luoya, so they used control spells. After the chain rushed out, Nua Iyer didn't follow up with any spells, and Xia Luot also lowered the trigger. The two girls were confident in their moves, and also believed that under their cooperation, the silver-haired girl would inevitably fall. No matter what, AI Lizzie was only an adopted child of the Akot family, and didn't have Akot's bloodline. Not to mention in Saint Maester theocracy, even in Akot territory, she was unknown. Nua Iyer could vaguely sense a threat from her every birthday, but she had never seen her make a move. As for Xia Luot, she didn't put AI Lizzie in her eyes at all. In her eyes, the outcome was already decided. However, the result of the matter was far beyond their expectations. You two. How long do you want to hinder me and my elder brother? Under the invasion of the cold, the silver-haired girl roared and her body began to emit light. Her red eyes angrily glared at the two girls who ruined her plan, and she raised her finger and softly chanted, "Curse disintegration." The moment AI Lizzie released the curse, an invisible wave gushed out from her body and swept through the room like a gust of wind. The chain that rushed towards her like an arrow disappeared like a painting erased by a painter, and the cold and stiffness in her body also returned to normal, as if it didn't exist. Nua Iyer and Xia Luot, who were at the door, suddenly widened their eyes when the curse was released. It wasn't because their curse was cancelled, but because of the powerful anti-curse skill called curse disintegration. As a powerful countermeasure against extraordinary spellcasters, this skill was a must-learn for almost all extraordinary spellcasters. Even the extremist swordsmen who didn't know how to cast other curses would practice it. However, this curse couldn't escape from one principle, and that was that it needed to be suppressed by a level. When facing powerful curses like Nua Iyer and Xia Luot, it needed to be one level higher to completely dispel it. In other words, it needed to be at source level 3. Source level 3? How is that possible? This little girl, Nua Iyer and Xia Luot, were shocked by this unbelievable fact. AI Lizzie was 2 years younger than them, and reaching source level 4 at this age was already a terrifying talent. It was impossible for her to reach source level 3. If this was true, it would break the record of the extraordinary humans in history. Wait, she's still using other curses. I see. She's consuming her own life force to increase the power of the curse. Nua Iyer suddenly understood when she saw the girl's body emitting a faint glow. Curse overload was a curse that was relatively difficult to learn, and almost no one used it. The principle was very simple, and it was purely to increase the power of the curse. It could even release higher-level curses that didn't match the current level. The side effect was also simple and straightforward, which was to damage one's life force. Harming oneself in order to increase the power of one or two curses was a big taboo in actual combat, because almost no one could guarantee that they could defeat their opponent in a single move. However, this curse was tailor-made for AI Lizzie, and even the difficulty of Xia's curse was reduced by half for her. This was because people with regenerative bloodlines didn't have to worry about the side effects. AI Lizzie, Akata, had reached source level 4 at such a young age, and it wasn't just because of her talent that Nua Iyer and the others thought. More importantly, it was because of her bloodline. Ordinary extraordinary humans might only be able to release 10 curses every day before they couldn't bear the side effects, but AI Lizzie could use her bloodline ability to practice dozens or even hundreds of times. If Xia Luot was a genius, and Nua Iyer was a genius who worked hard, then AI Lizzie was a genius who worked hard to break through the age gap. There was no doubt that there were many painful experiences in this kind of hard work, but in order to stay by her elder brother's side forever, AI Lizzie endured it all. This was also the reason why Kadia supported her. When he saw the girl repeatedly being injured and healed, but still releasing curses to become stronger, perhaps even a cold-hearted person would be moved. In fact, in Ka Dia's eyes, the most reliable member of the Akata family wasn't Luoya, nor was it the group of powerful and numerous guards, but Ai Lizi. Ka Dia believed from the beginning that if Luoya's life was in danger, this girl who usually didn't reveal her abilities would be able to disregard her own life and stand in front of him. Once Ai Lizi broke through to source level 3, she would be able to trade her life for his. Of course, Ka Dia didn't want this to happen, but this didn't stop him from acknowledging Ai Lizi. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.